Chapter 241. When Jilin heard the old man's words, the last trace of doubt in his heart disappeared. If it was really like what the old man said, to do things like upholding justice and fairness, Jilin admitted that he could not do it, and this was not something he should do. He should look for Staya for these things. And Jilin felt that if the sea race was really a creature created by his dragon ancestors, they probably would not care about fairness and justice. There was a good saying among humans: birds of a feather flock together. There should not be any kind creatures like herbivores on the dragon side. Staya alone was enough for such a person. Just this one person had already tormented him quite a bit. Tell me specifically, what unfair things did the humans do to you? Jilin asked, reporting to the dragon god. This matter started from the distant mythological era. Humans, various races, and some gods joined forces and launched a war against the gods under the leadership of the god of war. The sea race was naturally among them, side by side with the humans. That war destroyed the world and was extremely difficult. But in the desperate struggle of many gods and heroes of various races, we still won the final victory. In the end, the gods all left, leaving behind such a vast world for all living beings. The various races of the world won, so naturally, it was time for everyone to divide the territory. So, the various races of the world set up the 10,000 races contract. 10,000 races contract? Jilin was confused. There were 10,000 races at that time? No. It is said that this name was given by the humans, and the ancestors of the various races felt that it was very imposing, so they did not have any objections. Jilin nodded in realization. He thought that the humans' habit of exaggerating things was actually passed down from their ancestors. The old man saw that Jilin did not seem to have anything to say, so he continued. According to the 10,000 races contract, each race lived in one place and did not interfere with or invade each other. The various races banished the most ferocious orcs, who were in the Chaos Camp, into the barren southern wilderness. The elves found an island and lived in seclusion. From then on, the sea belonged to the sea race. The mountains belonged to the dwarves. The plains belonged to the humans. The forest belonged to the magical beasts. The sky belonged to the feather race. The rivers and lakes belonged to the spirit. That was how it should be. However, the peaceful lives of the various races did not last for more than a few decades before the naturally greedy humans began to covet the territories of other races. Then, they developed in secret and brazenly broke the contract of all living things. The other races were not prepared and were caught off guard. In addition, the humans had the advantage in numbers and were indeed powerful. The other races were beaten to the point that they did not have the slightest ability to fight back. Humans needed to drink water, rivers, and lakes. That was why the Lingxiu race, who did not like to fight, had been exterminated. The humans didn't like the harpies flying above their heads, so they shot the harpies down with arrows. Countless wings were stained with blood. Humans claimed that they were protecting themselves. When magical beasts attacked humans, they invaded the forests of magical beasts in the name of revenge. As a result, all magical beasts could only live in the depths of the forest. This might not sound like a problem at first, but the problem was that magical beasts never left the forest. After years of war, the humans suddenly realized that they needed the ores in the mountains to make weapons, so they attacked the dwarfs. At that time, the dwarves were evenly distributed across the mountains of the world. They were unable to resist the oppression of the humans. After many years, humans finally occupied half of the world. However, they were still not satisfied. They expanded their forces once again, driving the already barren beastmen to an even further south region. The actions of humans are too innumerable to be recorded. Jilin listened to the elders' complaints about the humans and actually laughed. Jilin thought that the sea race actually knew how to use idioms. However, the sea race did not know what was going on. They would never have thought that this godlike megalosaurus would actually ridicule them in his heart. Startled by Jilin's laughter, the elder did not continue speaking. He raised his head and looked at Jilin. Oh, it's nothing. Jilin waved his hand. Go on. What you've said does prove that humans are guilty of the most heinous crimes. However, what does this have to do with the sea race? After all, no matter how greedy humans are, they can't snatch the sea race's territory, right? Originally, that was the case. However, according to the agreement between the sea and the land, whenever the sea submerged the sand, the land would belong to the sea race. When the tide receded and the land was exposed again, only then would it belong to the humans. However, in order to monopolize this land, the humans built a city gate at the mouth of the sea to block the water. From then on, the sea race was not allowed to set foot on land. Jilin pondered for a moment and slowly said, I see. Then you called me here because you wanted to help you flatten the Comwind Pass? We don't dare to trouble Lord Dragon God to do it. The elder hurriedly said, We only want to ask Lord Dragon God to remove the seal in our bodies. This way, we will naturally take what the sea race deserves. What seal? We sea race are naturally afraid of flying dragons. We cannot resist. We hope Lord Dragon God will grant us this favor. Jilin really did not know who this old man learned these words from. He was even biting on words. No, Jilin said. What you're saying is not because of who placed the seal on you. It is because you are all created by dragons. Naturally, you'll have an instinctive sense of fear towards dragons. This is your instinct, a characteristic of the sea race. You can consider it as an indelible flaw left behind by the ancestors of the dragon race when they created you. If you insist on removing this flaw, I'm afraid you will die because of it. In the words of humans, this is probably innate. No one could do anything about it. But why would humans dare to rebel against the gods? Weren't humans created by the gods too? You said it before. When it comes to creating living beings, the dragon race is indeed no match for the gods. Creatures created by the gods do not have such an obvious flaw. Could it be that the heavens really want to destroy the sea race? The elder looked up to the sky and roared, his expression agitated. What are you shouting for? I say, you are from the sea race. Why are you acting like a human? Jilin finally could not hold it in. You are blaming the heavens for a small matter? And the heavens want to destroy you. Does the heavens know you? Lord Dragon God? You are right. The elder was stunned. He trembled as he squeezed out these words. It was obvious that he did not know what to say anymore. How is this something that a megalosaurus that could rival the gods would say? This is actually not difficult, Jilin said. I hope Lord Dragon God can give me some pointers. The elder said, I will help you call those flying dragons away and give you a chance to fight fairly. The rest will be up to you, Jilin said with a smile, his face full of evil intentions. Jilin did not have the slightest favorable impression of any human empire. However, if he had to say which country he hated the most, it would definitely be the Divine Dragon Empire. The reason was obvious. No creature familiar with Jilin dared to mention the 3 words Dragon Knight in front of Jilin. Aisha and Staya, who knew Jilin the earliest, even thought that Jilin did not know that there was a kind of person in the world called Dragon Knight. Yu Ying and Jilin had heard someone mention it once in the Divine Dragon Empire. However, at that time, Yu Ying thought that he had concealed it very well and felt that Jilin should not have noticed. At the same time, he deliberately ignored the fact that Jilin had a photographic memory. However, what they did not know was that long before them, there was a human who had led a group of people into the Red Dragon Palace. That person's self-introduction was, Great Holy Megalosaurus, I am the commander of the Dragon Knights from the Divine Dragon Empire, Titus Lauren. Dragon Knights, dragons. Riders, knights. At that time, Jilin had made up his mind that if he had the chance, he would definitely erase this so-called empire from the world. Now, the Oceanids had suddenly appeared and wanted to do this for him, saving him a lot of effort. Jilin did not mind going with the flow and helping them. Chapter 242. The Sea Tribe Elder was overjoyed. Although he didn't understand what Jilin meant by a fair battle to the Divine Dragon Empire, if all of their wyverns were to be transferred away, would there still be any fairness? Wouldn't that be like a bird losing its wings and a beast losing its claws and fangs? However, This didn't stop the elder from nodding and praising Jilin for being wise and mighty. He had never thought of having a fair battle with humans. Of course, humans did the same to the sea tribe. In that case, the entire sea tribe thanks Lord Dragon God. The sea tribe elder cowed out. Well said. Jilin smiled casually. How do you want to thank me? How? The elder's mouth twitched, and the corners of his eyes twitched. He almost died before he could catch his breath. He thought to himself, no matter what, you're still a high and mighty member of the dragon race. Aren't you afraid of lowering your status by directly asking for benefits? Jilin obviously wasn't afraid. Or rather, he didn't think that asking for benefits was lowering his status. When he was planning to rob humans, Staya had told him that the world should be fair if one didn't work and didn't get anything. Jilin felt that if Staya, a princess of a country, could say something like that, it was enough to prove that it made sense. Since that was the case, it should be the other way around. If he worked, he should naturally get benefits. This also made sense. Although the Sea Tribe elder was stunned, he was still a man standing at the top of the Sea Tribe. He had ruled the Sea Tribe for many years, and his mind worked very quickly. In just a moment, he made up his mind. The Sea Tribe will definitely thank you with treasures. We don't need Lord Dragon God's advice. The elder said, we invited you here, so we should prepare enough offerings for you. We'll bring them up for you now. However, the Sea Tribe has been living in the deep sea for a long time, and we really don't have anything to give you. We hope Lord Dragon God won't mind. Although the elder said that he didn't have anything to give, his old face was filled with pride and confidence that even the countless wrinkles couldn't hide. He was clearly saying, we'll definitely satisfy you. Soon, several high-ranking members of the sea race carried 4 or 5 large boxes and placed them in front of Jilin. Under Jilin's instructions, the sea folk opened the box on the spot. For a moment, golden light shone out. Boxes of golden sand, a translucent blood coral that was half the height of a person, piles of large pearls and gemstones of various colors were randomly placed. Jilin nodded in satisfaction. No wonder the old man was so confident. Jilin and the old man were both satisfied and proud. However, the moment the other members of the sea race saw these chests, their expressions became very interesting. It was as if they had chewed 2 bitter gourds. These treasures were huge in quantity and varied in variety. One could tell at a glance that they were not prepared at the last minute. This was the offering that the oceanic race used to worship the ancestor god every year. As a race created by the dragon race, the sea race naturally knew the preferences of the dragon race. Thus, they spent some effort and used the strength of their entire race to gather these few boxes of treasures. Every year, when they worshipped the ancestor god, they would bring them out from the warehouse to support the occasion. These things weren't money in the eyes of the Oceanites. After so many years, these treasures had not even been opened, let alone drawn and used by others. Speaking of which, this was the first time they had opened a box in all these years. They didn't expect that they would all be taken away by someone just like that. Jilin casually put away these treasures and looked at the old man. 2 days later, there won't be a flying lizard in front of Calm Wind Pass. Since she had received money, she had to do things for them. This was Aisha's creed. Jilin also felt that this was very reasonable. In that case, many thanks to the dragon god. The old man cupped his fists and bowed. When he raised his head again, Jilin had already disappeared. Only a series of shocked and complicated gazes were left. He was elusive and elusive. The old man was still praising in his heart, but when he followed everyone's gaze, he realized that there was another big hole in the roof of the Crystal Palace. Damn it, if you want to leave, can't you just go back the way you came? At this moment, even the old man, who had always acted shrewdly in front of Jilin, couldn't help but curse in his heart. Father! A sea girl in a white dress gently walked to the old man's side and called out in a low voice. The old man turned his head and glanced at her. When he saw that it was his most beloved eldest daughter, the anger in his heart instantly subsided by half. He sighed and said, Xiong. When Xiong saw that her father wasn't as angry as she thought, so she continued, Father, this time we tried to summon the dragon god, didn't we want to when he took his daughter's hand and patted it gently? Father knows that this time we wanted to ask the dragon god to directly attack Calm Wind Pass. But we can't. We still have to do it ourselves. Why? When Xiong didn't understand. With the dragon god's strength, destroying Calm Wind Pass is as easy as lifting a finger. You're trying to say that as long as we guide the dragon god a little, we can use him, right? Wen Yi stared at his daughter. Wen Xiong was startled and slowly lowered her head. Although Wen Ye's words seemed a little disrespectful to the dragon god, that was indeed what she meant. When Wen Yi saw that she didn't speak, he knew that his guess was right. Actually, your thinking isn't wrong. Wen Yi said, in the eyes of the various races in the world, the gods are never omniscient and omnipotent. They're just a kind of powerful creature who's far away from a human world and whose strength is unparalleled. So we can often see in the legends of various races that there are people who use their wisdom to deceive the gods and gain benefits from it. If the dragon god's performance just now was really like that of a god, I wouldn't hesitate to carry out the plan we've drawn up before. But this dragon god really isn't like a dragon at all. His actions are more like a human's. He has a human-like mind and can understand the tongue-twisting words of humans. He can find the loopholes in our logic and seize the opportunity to gain benefits for himself. The dragon race loves gold and treasures, but there's only one who doesn't care about his status like this one. Of course, praying to the gods only requires faith. But if you want to ask for help, you have to pay a price. But Calm Wind Pass. What's the point of Calm Wind Pass without dragons? Without the shackles of our own bloodline, we, the sea race, are the kings of the world. But how can we be sure that the dragon god will definitely transfer the wyverns away? When he stroked his daughter's head and chuckled calmly, there's no need to worry about this. The dragon god can't bear to see a wyvern that looks like him being ridden by a human and working for the humans. After all, a wyvern will still be a wyvern. So, as long as the dragon god arrives at Calm Wind Pass, there won't be a single wyvern left. Next, it's time for the sea race to take revenge on the humans. When Xiong heard this, she instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at her father, who was old but still wise beyond compare, she said, Father's plan is flawless. It's really wise, but this crystal palace. Wen Ye's expression instantly turned ugly. He raised his head to look at the two large holes in the ceiling of the crystal palace and remained silent for a long time. It was rare for his daughter to praise him so directly, saying that he's flawless. But he really didn't expect this. Chapter 243. 50 miles behind Calm Wind Pass was a huge plain. This was the place where the entire Calm Wind Pass relied on for survival. Although the Divine Dragon Empire believed that no one would plot against Calm Wind Pass, this was still an important military base. Normally, no one would be allowed to approach this place. But now, this place had suddenly become bustling with activity, a cauldron of voices. There were people everywhere, making this usually empty plain seem a little crowded. These people and piles of resources were the support the Hero King had given to Calm Wind Pass this year. 3 well-trained armies, countless military equipment, magic crystals. This was not all. The Hero King had even issued the highest-level national mission to the newly established Adventurer Guild to reinforce Calm Wind Pass. Therefore, countless adventurers from all over the world had gathered here. Their numbers were actually comparable to the army sent by the Hero King. Several tens of thousands of adventurers occupied half of this open space. They were separated by an invisible line, clearly separated from the Divine Dragon Empire's army. On one side, the army was orderly, with people standing guard. Their movements, sitting, and sleeping were all orderly. The camp was neat and orderly. On the other side, most of the adventurers were casually lying on the ground, resting with their eyes closed. A temporary stove was set up beside them, cooking potatoes or stewed meat in the pot. The adventurers were all sprawled on the ground, looking extremely lazy. They did not have any vigilance that adventurers should have. The Divine Dragon Empire soldiers looked at the camp from time to time, feeling that it was a little too polite to describe it as dirty and messy. Although they could not stand it, no soldiers crossed the line to say anything. Firstly, they could not do anything about it. Secondly, the adventurers were here to reinforce Calm Wind Pass. In the adventurers' camp, a warrior wearing white full-body armor sat beside a bonfire. This warrior's face was completely hidden under his helmet, making it impossible to see what he looked like. The only thing that could be determined from his body shape was that he was male. The warrior held a piece of gray sackcloth in one hand and was wiping the long sword in his other hand over and over again. Although the sword was not very good, the warrior was very serious about wiping it. He sat cross-legged with his back straight. His helmet was slightly lowered, and everyone's gaze was focused on the sword. It was so solemn, as if he was not wiping the sword, but performing a sacred ceremony. I say, what's so good about that sword of yours? Don't you find it annoying to do it over and over again? While the warrior was seriously wiping his sword, a tan man with messy short hair suddenly came up to talk to him. Judging from his familiar expression and tone, if others were to see them, they would think that they were adventurers who had been together for many years and had gone through many life and death situations together. But in reality, this was the first time the two of them had met. Roar sighed and raised his head to look at the burly man. Through the gap of the helmet, a black smiling face with a mouth full of white teeth appeared in his eyes. Traveling from the Simi Empire to the Divine Dragon Empire and across the entire continent, Roar had already met many people. Only now did he feel that the saying of the Middle Empire, when the forest is big enough, there are all kinds of birds, was very true. In this world, there were simple and kind villagers and grannies, as well as cunning and vicious bandits. There were also corrupt and evil officials who bullied the people and exploited the villagers. There were also city lords like Geraint who wholeheartedly served the country and the people. Therefore, since most people here saw him wiping his sword wholeheartedly, they did not meddle in other people's business and came over to talk to him. Naturally, there would also be nosy people who saw him acting strangely and could not help but ask him about it. There were so many people here, so Roar was not at all surprised that one of them had popped up. Roar lowered his head again and said calmly, but seriously, "Wiping the sword can calm my heart. This is very important before the battle begins." Roar said something extremely pretentious in order to end the conversation. According to his imagination, this seemingly simple-minded, burly man in front of him would show him a disdainful expression in the next moment, then turn around and leave. He would also be able to have some peace and quiet. However, he never expected that the burly man would not leave after hearing his words. Instead, he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. His grin widened, and his expression seemed to say, "What you said makes sense. I understand now." Then, this burly man sat neatly next to Roar, his face full of kindness, as if he had inadvertently met a confidant in life. "Not bad, brother. Listening to what you said, you are not an ordinary person. Why did you come alone?" The burly man said. Roar did not speak. The burly man's words were really a little too much for an adventurer. The burly man laughed. He already understood what kind of person the other party was. Roar did not speak, but the burly man did not care. He said, "You just said before the battle? Hey, what battle is there? We have been here for a few days, but in the end, that ping-pong pass did not even let us in. What do you think is the meaning of this? Didn't they issue a mission for us to come here? In the end, they just made us wait here? Right now, Calm Wind Pass hasn't suffered any casualties, and the soldiers are all in good order. If we go in now, we will only cause trouble for them," Luo Air said indifferently without even raising his head. Xiao Chun had been a storyteller in auspicious Cloud City for a while, relying on his Tier 6 strength to sit on equal footing with Geraint. He knew a little about the Divine Dragon Empire's military affairs. "Oh, you are indeed insightful," the burly man said with a grin. At the same time, he used his hand to hammer his breastplate and generously introduced himself. "My name is Wang Yan. May I ask for brother's great name?" "White Helmet. Isn't that too fake?" The burly man was speechless. Roar finally stopped wiping his sword. He looked up at the burly man's blue eyes and said hatefully, "Brother Wang, have you ever seen anyone from the Middle Empire with blue eyes?" "That is indeed very rare," Wang Yin said after thinking for a while. "Not at all. Is that so? Yes. Brother is indeed experienced and knowledgeable. Brother, do you know why I immediately saw you in the sea of people and came over to talk to you? Roar's hand paused for a moment. Although he hoped that the burly man would say something else and not make it sound so ambiguous, he really wanted to know the answer to this question. As a human hero appointed by the God of Light, Shao Qin knew that he was not strong enough. Hence, he always hid his identity and kept a low profile. This was the same for his armor. Logically speaking, no one should take a second look at him. Wang Yin was clearly the kind of person who did not need others to respond to him. When he saw that Roar did not say anything, he looked up at the sky and said with a melancholic expression, "Brother, have you heard of the Church of Light?" Roar was stunned. It would not be good if he did not answer this question. Naturally, everyone knows of the Church of Light. When you were wiping your sword earlier, you looked very much like those believers of light who prayed to the gods. You looked very pious. Yes, pious. The burly man had a nostalgic expression as he spoke. Are you very familiar with the Church of Light? The burly man hesitated for a moment and said slowly, I stayed there in my early years. As the burly man spoke, he raised a finger and a weak holy light slowly lit up between his fingers. Obviously, Wang Yan's attainment in the holy light was not high. However, even if the holy light was weak, it was enough to prove his identity as a member of the Church of Light. Roar finally put down his sword. Even the farthest place from the Saimai Empire, he was able to meet a fellow countryman. What else was there to say? The Saimai Empire is very far from here. Roar sighed. Why are you here? Wang Yin was stunned and said happily, fellow countryman. Yes. Roar nodded. His attitude was obviously much better. Haha. Wang Yin was happy. I knew it. Why do I feel so close to you? Haha. Roar was also happy. Brother Wang, do you want me to introduce myself again? Hey. Wang Yin quickly stopped Shao Chun. Since they were fellow countrymen, he naturally had to take care of Shao Chun. There are too many people here. There might be people with ulterior motives. Let's not talk about your real name. From the looks of it, you probably don't want others to recognize you, right? We are all in the same boat. There is no need for us to know each other. Don't you think so? Brother Wang is right, Roar said with a smile. Brother Wang, are you a holy knight? No. Then there are not many like you in the Church of Light. Haha, I did not stay in the church for long. Brother Wang, why are you here? To earn money. The Divine Dragon Empire's national missions pay a lot. Brother Wang, it is not easy to earn money here. I have never seen the oceanic race in my life. The sacred scripture of light said that these monsters came from the deep abyss and ate people without spitting out their bones. Just listening to it makes me feel disgusted. Then why are you here? Sigh. There's no choice in this world. Say, when do you think we can go on stage? We have already been here for a few days. Since we are not allowed to enter Calm Wind Pass, it means that they do not need us. If everything goes smoothly, they probably will not let us go on stage. Doesn't that mean we came here for nothing? Isn't that good? There will be a lot of people who will survive. That is rather good. Wang Yin wanted to say something, but Roar stood up for some reason. His helmet faced Calm Wind Pass's direction, not moving at all. What's wrong? Wang Yin asked carefully, startled. Be quiet, Roar shouted. Wang Yin was startled by Roar's sudden stern voice. He did not dare to say anything else. He could only stare blankly in the direction of Calm Wind Pass with Roar. After a while, a strong wind blew, sweeping up countless fallen leaves and dust. Following that, 10-odd flying dragons formed a group and flew over their heads. They flew west, in the opposite direction from Calm Wind Pass. Wang Yin was dumbstruck as he watched the flying dragons leave. Roar's face, which was hidden in his helmet, was so gloomy that it seemed as though water could drip from it. The entire clearing was silent, because no one could say a complete sentence. Everyone saw the flying dragons leave. Everyone understood what this meant. However, no one knew what to do. Chapter 244. The wyverns had flown away. This was a fact that everyone could see. But for the vast majority of people, they wished that they had never seen this. This what's going on. Wang Yin stuttered for a long time before finally speaking. Roar did not know what was going on either. However, he knew that this was no longer important. As the main force of Calm Wind Pass, the Dragon Knights had all flown away. To Calm Wind Pass, this was no different from removing the firewood from under the cauldron. Big Brother Wong, how many of you came? Roar asked. Wang Yin had just asked Roar this question. Roar did not answer, but now Roar answered without hesitation, including me, 5. Were their strengths? 4 tier 5. I am tier 6, Wang Yin said. Roar turned to look at Wang Yin in surprise. With this strength, he could become a city lord in the Divine Dragon Empire. Let's go up the wall later. We can take care of each other. I'm also a tier 6, so I won't drag you guys down. Luo Air explained in detail. Ever since he knew that Wang Yin was a member of the Church of Light, Roar was no longer wary of him. The members of the church were all brothers and sisters. There was nothing to say. Roar originally thought that Wang Yin would gladly accept. After all, anyone would be happy to have a tier 6 expert in the team. This was a considerable help. However, to Roar's surprise, Wang Yin was only stunned for a moment before asking curiously, "Go up what wall? Which wall?" Roar narrowed his eyes. He did not understand what Wang Yin was trying to say. At this point, which wall could it be? Were there any other walls within 100 li of Calm Wind Pass? If he had to name one, it would be the simple walls of the camp. The problem was that the walls were made of sharp wood. There was sharp wood at the top. They could not go up. Roar's entire body was hidden under his armor. At this moment, he looked at Wang Yin without moving. He really looked like a statue. Naturally, Wang Yin could not see his gloomy expression. He continued to say, "Didn't you say that we wouldn't need to go up if things went well? Why are you? The current situation is definitely not going well. It should be said that it's extremely bad." Roar said, "Terrible." Wang Yin looked at Roar. Just because of those dragons that flew away? Couldn't it be that he went out to do something at the last minute? Maybe he'll be back soon? The situation might not be that bad, right? Impossible, Roar said firmly. Something must have happened. The number of wyverns that flew away just now was close to 20. There weren't many wyverns in Calm Wind Pass this year, so those that flew away just now should be all of them. No matter what happened to the Divine Dragon Empire, it was impossible for them to transfer all the Dragon Knights away during the high tide. Even if the Divine Dragon Empire is destroyed, that's impossible. That makes sense. Wang Yin nodded his head lightly as he felt that his brother was indeed knowledgeable. If that's the case, let's hurry up and leave. Where to? This time, it was Roar's turn to be confused. Calm Wind Pass hadn't allowed them to enter yet. Where else can we go? Anywhere is fine. Let's hurry up and leave. Wang Yin said anxiously. After saying that, he reached out to pull Roar. After all, they were brothers from the same hometown. If there was a need to pull, Wang Yin had to help. Roar dodged Wang Yin's hand and asked in disbelief, "Are you trying to run? What are you talking about?" Wang Yin berated Roar. "This is called retreating." "Ridiculous!" Roar shouted, scaring Wang Yin into taking half a step back. Calm Wind Pass is a place of great importance. The lives of half the Empire's citizens depend on it. How many people are there? How can we abandon it and run? Yes, that's right. Half the Empire's citizens. However, this is the Divine Dragon Empire, and we are people of the Saimai Empire. Wang Yin said anxiously. He didn't understand what this little brother of his was doing. If they didn't leave now, it might be difficult to leave later. So what? Roar said. Others might not know, but do you think we don't? The Divine Dragon Empire is at the easternmost part of the continent, while we are at the westernmost part. You and I know best how far we are from each other. Even if this Calm Wind Pass falls, will it harm our Saimai Empire? Wang Yin said anxiously. He hoped that this brother of his could quickly understand this logic and leave with him. Although the two of them were strangers who met by chance, it wasn't easy for them to cross the continent and meet from the same hometown. The two of us left our homes and suffered hardships along the way. How can we throw our lives away here for the sake of another empire's citizens? Since this matter didn't concern him, why should he meddle in other people's business? He might be called Wang Yin now, but he wasn't someone from the Middle Empire. What are you saying? Roar said. The people of the Divine Dragon Empire are also people. They are all bathed in the radiance of the Radiant God. They are no different from us. Hey, You came all the way here from the Sinai Empire. Why are you still so stubborn? All living things under the heavens are children of light. Only people from the Church of Light believe this. If you say this to others, how will they look at you? They don't need you to care about them. Didn't you hear this saying when you pass by the Middle Empire? It's called take care of yourself when you're poor. Wang Yin said, Of course, I've heard this saying before. I also know that there's another saying, take care of the world when you're great. You're just a level 6. Can you be considered great in this land? You won't be able to be picked out from a crowd. Those who are truly great have already entered Calm Wind Pass. Wang Yin said with a glare. He wondered why this brother of his didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Brother Wang, what are you here for? Luo Air was beginning to understand. Didn't I make it clear before? It's to earn money. Just earn money? What else? There's so many missions that can earn money. Why do you insist on doing this? Brother, the others aren't easy to do. Moreover, this is the most suitable. Brother, let's hurry up and leave. Some of them have already gone far away. Roar was shocked when he heard this. He looked around. Roar only felt a wave of dizziness when he looked around. Luckily, he didn't collapse. The scene was just as Wang Yin had said. Many adventurers had already started to pack their things and were preparing to leave. There were even some who didn't have many things and had already finished packing. At this moment, only their backs could be seen from afar. Roar had been too agitated and angry earlier, and I didn't notice this at all. Luo Air finally understood that these people did not come to help because they saw that Calm Wind Pass was at risk of being lost. They only came because of their kind and brave hearts. They were here purely for the bountiful rewards of the Empire's mission. It was very pure. For someone like Wang Yin, although his strength was not considered top-notch in the entire continent, if he was placed in a remote village, he would still be a tyrant. Such a person was naturally much stronger than the ordinary soldiers in Calm Wind Pass. Therefore, they were confident that they could blend in with the soldiers and hunt the Sea Tribe without risking their lives. Why not? However, now that Calm Wind Pass had lost its wyverns, the suppression of the Sea Tribe was gone. These adventurers no longer had the confidence to retreat unscathed from Calm Wind Pass. Seeing that the losses outweighed the gains and the risks were too great, they decisively left. Were these the experts of the human race? Were these the adventurers who occupied the resources of the human race and received the support of the various empires? They were all vile people who only knew how to seek benefits and avoid harm. Hey, as Roar was wearing a helmet, Wang Yin couldn't see his expression. He thought that Roar was just standing there in a daze because he couldn't accept the reality and hurriedly pushed him. Hurry up and leave. What are you still doing here? It's not appropriate. Roar took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He knew that Wang Yin was doing this for his own good, so he suppressed his anger and didn't say anything. He only said calmly, Brother Wang, you can leave by yourself. Take care. What about you? I'll stay. I'll go to Calm Wind Pass. Brother, you might be alive to earn this money, but you won't be alive to spend it. Wang Yin panicked. I'm not here to earn money. I'm here to help the soldiers of Calm Wind Pass guard. Wang Yin was stunned. You want to die? No. I'm here to guard the pass. Chapter 245. As long as one was not a fool, one could tell what the departure of the flying dragons meant to Calm Wind Pass. More than half of the adventurers had left in the blink of an eye when they saw the figure of the flying dragon leaving. This was the best proof. Roar looked at Wang Yin's departing figure and suddenly felt that this was good. At the very least, the ones remaining were either idiots or people willing to defend Calm Wind Pass to their deaths. The group immediately became much purer. Such a huge change happened in the camp behind Calm Wind Pass. Naturally, the situation at Calm Wind Pass went without saying. All the soldiers of Calm Wind Pass had witnessed this horrifying scene. The dragon knights were flying freely on the surface of the sea. Wherever they went, all the sea folk would retreat. Even in this hellish battlefield, they were still able to act as if there was no one around. Just how majestic and awe-inspiring was this? How reassuring was this? However, all of a sudden, the flying dragons that Calm Wind Pass relied on went crazy. No, to Boris and the other Divine Dragon Empire people, this was definitely madness. The flying dragons were originally flying steadily. However, all of a sudden, they all stopped and started to tremble violently. The flying dragons were so manic and crazy. Everyone could tell that the flying dragons wanted to throw off the dragon knights on their backs. Although everyone could tell, they did not dare to believe it. This was even more so for Boris. As a general with an extremely special status in the Divine Dragon Empire, some of the Empire's secrets could not be hidden from him. He knew that the Divine Dragon Empire had methods to control the flying dragons. Therefore, the scene before his eyes should never have happened. The flying dragons actually started to go against the Dragon Knight's will. This news dealt a significant blow to Boris's steel-like nerves. For a moment, Boris stood there in a daze, forgetting to move. This was the case for everyone. The humans and Oceanids all stopped moving at the same time, focusing their gazes on the 10-odd flying dragons. This was the crucial point of this battle. This was the turning point that would decide the outcome of the battle. Compared to this, killing one or two enemies in the chaos was insignificant. Indeed, the flying dragons did not disappoint. So many people had gathered to watch them. It did not take long for them to throw off the Dragon Knights. Looking at the Dragon Knight's appearance, he was absolutely flustered. Obviously, he had never dealt with such a situation before. The Dragon Knights fell from the sky. Although they were powerhouses of the 8th grade and above, they did not have the ability to fly for long periods of time. They could only struggle in the air for a while to delay their fall or temporarily float in the air. However, in the end, he still fell into the endless sea like a dumpling. He was instantly dragged into the deep sea by countless members of the oceanic race. He did not even have the chance to struggle. Although the spaceships of the Middle Empire saw that the situation was not good, they quickly moved to rescue the Dragon Knights. However, they only managed to save 5 Dragon Knights, one for each spaceship. It couldn't be helped. Previously, in order to suppress the Sea Tribe in the entire sea region, the 18 Dragon Knights were too spread out. It was impossible to rescue all of them in time. The flying dragons left their dragon riders behind and flew towards the south together. They were extremely decisive and did not even look at Calm Wind Pass. The surface of the sea was boiling. All of the sea folk cheered. It had been their wish for many years that there were no dragons in the sky. Now, he finally got what he wanted. Today was the day to wipe away the humiliation he had suffered. An eye for an eye. How could the oceanic race not be wild with joy? Calm Wind Pass was deathly silent. Some looked at the endless sea and the countless members of the oceanic race, while others stood up and turned to look at the sky in the west. Their eyes were lifeless, and their mouths were slightly open. As for what these people were thinking, no one knew. They might be thinking a lot, or they might not be thinking at all. Bose, on the other hand, was thinking a lot in an instant. It was not a practical question like, why are the flying dragons acting so strangely? Rather, it was a complicated thought like, why isn't this F***king world exploding? The heavens want to end my Calm Wind Pass. The heavens are punishing the human race. Bose was silent for a long time. He looked at the endless enemies in front of him and muttered to himself. Other than these useless laments, he really did not know what else to say. General Bose, what should we do now? Li Gui was indeed a member of the imperial family. He was the first to react at this time. Things had already happened, and the flying dragons had already flown away. There was no point in haggling over it now. It was better to use this time to think of countermeasures. Bose turned to look at Li Gui in a daze. What should they do? Bose also wanted to know. Although Bose had guarded Calm Wind Pass for several decades, there had never been a time when Calm Wind Pass was like this, without a single flying dragon. Bose really wanted to say, go to hell. How many times can you fight like this? However, he could not. 30 years ago, Bose had no problem saying this. Back then, he was just an insignificant general in Calm Wind Pass. He could say anything he wanted, and it did not matter. However, he was now the highest-ranking general in Calm Wind Pass. Furthermore, he had been in this position for 20-odd years, not taking a single step out of Calm Wind Pass. His reputation in Calm Wind Pass was already like the sun at noon. Even the first prince of the Middle Empire and the Divine Dragon Empire's legendary experts had to listen to Bo's orders. Even if the Hero King wrote a private letter to Bose, the Hero King would have to consider the wording carefully and be polite. If too few Dragon Knights came, the Hero King would have to apologize. With Bo's status and reputation, these words could not be casually said. There were still half of the Empire's citizens behind him. Given the ferocity of the sea folk, they would not be able to leave in time once Calm Wind Pass fell. Moreover, after so many years, so many of his brothers had died in Ping Foam Pass. Old Cat, Old Rat, Big Guy, these were the brothers who had joined the army with him. They ate and lived with him. Now, he couldn't even remember their real names. They had died too early. Over the years, Bose had personally seen countless brothers die at Calm Wind Pass. The blood they shed could wash Calm Wind Pass, known as the #1 pass in the world, 3 times over. These brothers were still watching. Now that the flying dragons were gone and could no longer suppress the sea folk, he was not going to defend the pass. Was he going to bring his men and leave? Bose felt that he could not do it. He also did not have the right to do so. No one had the right to do so. His brothers who died in battle risked their lives to defend this pass. This was their pass. The only thing Bose could do was help them defend it. Even if they could not defend it, they would die here. Otherwise, how could he face them after he died? Bose used only 2 breaths of time to sort out his thoughts. Then, he said to Li Gui, "What else can we do? We can only fight to the death." "General, you are valiant. I, Gui, am deeply impressed." Hearing this, Li Gui carefully tidied his clothes and cupped his hands in salute. He said sincerely, "It is my duty. Your Highness, you don't have to do this. Do you really plan to resist the rising tide without the flying dragons?" Flay, who was at the side, asked. "I have never planned to do so." Bose said, "But I must do so." "General Bose, do you think that Calm Wind Pass can still be defended?" Flay asked. "It can be defended, but it can't be defended. Let's fight to the death. Until death do us part." Bose raised his sword and roared loudly. Chapter 246. There was once a detective who said, "After eliminating all the impossible, the only thing left, no matter how unreasonable it is the truth." This was often the case for many things in life. When you were faced with a pile of options and didn't know where to start, you might as well cross out the ones that you absolutely couldn't choose. In the end, you would often find that there was only one option left. At that time, you would realize that you didn't have a choice from the start. You could only walk down this path. That was also the case for Bose. When he rejected many of the ideas in his mind that he couldn't do, he was left with only one option, which was to fight to the death. As for whether they could defend the pass or not, Bose didn't want to think about it. Regardless of whether they could defend the pass or not, they had to fight. Since that was the case, there was no difference whether he thought about it or not. There was only to think about it anymore. The problem was that his subordinates had always risked their lives and fought bravely. They had always been able to defend the Calm Wind Mountain Pass. This way, everyone would fight with their lives on the line. Even if they died, it would be worth it. To protect the country, to sacrifice their flesh and blood to protect the peace of the area. This was the duty of a soldier. But this time, even Bose didn't think highly of it. He didn't even have a 20% chance of success. In such a situation, should he still let his brothers die with him? This was indeed a question worth thinking about. Brothers. Bose took out the City Lord token of Calm Wind Mountain Pass. Under the effect of the City Lord token, Bose's voice reverberated throughout the entire Calm Wind Mountain Pass. Everyone could hear him clearly. His voice was like a thunderclap. All the soldiers immediately looked at him. Obviously, they hoped that the general could come up with a more reliable idea at this time. Now that the flying dragon was gone, what should they do? Bose coughed twice and opened his mouth. Just as he was about to say something, the sea surface suddenly started moving. Yes, it was moving. The sea surface seemed to have come alive. Everyone knew that there were currents in the sea. However, no one had ever seen one before. In the eyes of humans, the sea was like a vast basin of stagnant water. There was no flow, only the occasional ebb and flow. But now, the movement of the water had reached a point where it could be seen with the naked eye. This instantly attracted Bose's attention. The seawater slowly condensed and became solid. A high platform made of seawater rose from the sea. It reached the same height as the walls of Calm Wind Mountain Pass. It was a city of water. Looking at this magnificent scene, Bose knew that the real enemy was about to appear, and it just so happened that it was at the worst moment. However, the expression on his face did not change in the slightest because his expression could not get any uglier. General Bose. There was nothing above the water platform except for a throne in the middle that was also formed by water. A blue-haired young man in blue and white silk clothes was sitting on the throne. It was as if he was the only god between heaven and earth. It was this person who had called out General Bowsy just now. Although he was far away from Calm Wind Mountain Pass, his voice still easily reached everyone's ears. It was incomparably clear. Flay casually glanced at him. His strength was extraordinary, but it was nothing more than this. Li Gui, on the other hand, was watching intently. He had long since heard that the high-level members of the Sea Tribe had the ability to control the flow of water. Now that he had seen it for himself, it was indeed incomparably miraculous. Li Gui narrowed his eyes and took a closer look. Gradually, he could see the face of that high-level member of the Sea Clan. Li Gui was astonished, thinking that this monster was even more handsome than his third brother, who was like a spring breeze and a peach blossom. How unreasonable. Wen Lingjue. Boss looked at that person and said word by word. It was obvious that he knew him. Who is this person? Li Gui asked in a low voice. The vanguard of the Sea Clan, Bose replied. Why does he have a Middle Empire surname? Li Gui asked. The Sea Clan's low-level members have no name or surname, while the high-level members all have the surname Wen. Why is that? Li Gui asked. How would I know? Bose opened his eyes wide. General Bose, who said that the Sea Clan's people have no name or surname. They have it, but you humans don't understand it, Wen Lingjue said. Oh my. Li Gui suddenly turned his head and looked at Wen Lingjue. He thought that he had already lowered his voice enough, but he did not expect that this monster would still hear him. Wen Lingjue looked at him and nodded slightly. He smiled faintly, and his manners were impeccable. Li Gui felt that this monster was more and more like his third brother. The word Wen refers to the sun above and the water below. The ancestor said that it has the majestic image of the sun above the sea. It's an excellent word, so the Sea Clan's generations have used it as their surname, Wen Lingjue said. Li Gui was very surprised. He thought that the monster had just casually come up with this surname and passed it down from generation to generation. He did not expect that he could actually come up with an allusion to it. According to the etiquette of the Middle Empire, this was a lesson learned. Li Gui was just about to salute and say, Thank you for your lesson, when he heard Bose say coldly, Wen Lingjue, how many years has it been since we met face to face? Wen Lingjue sat on the throne and tilted his head. He frowned and thought for a moment before saying, Counting carefully, according to your human language, it should be more than 20 years. I remember when I ruined your face. Oh my, it's been so many years. Why hasn't your face been cured yet? The treatment of the human race is not good. Do you need the Sea Clan to help you, so that you don't scare the other humans? Bose did not care about what he said. He was not a young lad anymore. How could he be so easily provoked? You have been hiding in the sea for more than 20 years. You don't go to the battlefield easily. Now that you have come out, do you want to talk nonsense like this? General Bose must be joking. Of course not. Then hurry up and say what you have to say. All right. Wen Lingjue thought for a moment and stood up from the chair. He used his hands to tidy up his clothes and said seriously, Pass down the order of the Sea Emperor. The human Bose has guarded Pingfeng Pass for many years. Even if he dies, he will not turn back. Even if he is an enemy, I am deeply impressed by his courage and strength of character. I respect him greatly. Even if the general is very brave, today the heavens are on my side. You will not have a chance to win. I am afraid that you will not be lucky enough to survive. General Bose is a hero and cannot bear to see a hero fall here. He specially asked the vanguard of the Sea Clan, Wen Lingjue, to stop the battle for 3 days. I hope that the general will withdraw from Pingfeng Pass as soon as possible and open the way for the Sea Clan to reach the shore. If the general does not understand the situation, Pingfeng Pass will fall after 3 days. When a nest is overturned, How can there be eggs intact? Whether you live or die, I hope you'll consider carefully. After when Lingjue finished speaking, he raised his head to look at Bose. It was obvious that he had finished reading. He raised his head to observe the other party's reaction. Bose did not react. Instead, it was Li Gue who suddenly frowned. Why did the Sea Emperor's wording sound like a decree from the Middle Empire? Moreover, he had grasped the essence of it. There are not just a few simple sentences. Look at how complicated it was, General Bose. The Emperor is merciful and appreciative of you. May I ask why you are still hesitating? When Lingjue saw that Bose did not speak for a long time, he could only raise his head himself. The countless Sea clan members were doing nothing here. They could not just wait for him alone. Bose stared at Wen Lingjue and said, "As long as the pass is here, everyone is here." Chapter 247. The air was deathly silent. Everyone looked at Wen Lingjue, waiting to see his reaction. Perhaps he would fly into a rage, or perhaps he would be exasperated. However, to everyone's surprise, Wen Lingjue only lowered his head and held his forehead, sighing. It seemed as if he had already expected Botha's words. The people inside are still alive. When Lingjue asked, "Of course," Both said, "How about this? You remove the protective array around Calm Wind Pass, and I'll flatten Calm Wind Pass before you leave." When Lingjue said, Both looked at Wen Lingjue without saying anything, but his eyes were filled with murderous intent. He didn't believe that Wen Lingjue didn't know what the words "the people inside are still alive" meant. How could he leave after flattening Calm Wind Pass? There was obviously a second line to this, which was "the people inside die." Do you insist on seeking death? When Lingjue asked, life or death, victory or defeat is still unknown. Why do you think you've won? Both said. At this moment, everyone was watching. No matter what, he couldn't lower his own prestige. Nonsense. Why do you have to deceive yourself? When Lingjue said, now that you've lost all your flying dragons, you have no way to suppress the sea race. Now, the sea race outnumber the human race by more than 100 times. Calm Wind Pass will fall without a doubt. As if to prove Wen Lingjue's words, countless sea race emerged from the sea. Countless sea race heads covered the entire surface of the sea and continued to spread into the distance, endlessly extending to the horizon. Li Gue looked at this scene and felt as if he had arrived at the legendary 18 levels of hell. According to legends, there were countless evil spirits there. Each of them looked extremely ferocious, with red eyes and sharp fangs. There were scales on their faces, and they wanted to eat people. The people they ate would become part of them, and wait with them for the next person to come. General Both, are you still unwilling to accept the Emperor's suggestion? When Lingjue asked, look at your brothers. They've been through life and death with you for many years. Are they willing to fight a battle with you that has no chance of winning? Both fell silent again. This was exactly what he had been thinking about. He had already made up his mind. If these soldiers wanted to leave, he would just let them go. There was no need to let these great men lose their lives because of his whims. Both's eyes slowly swept across his subordinates. Strangely, he didn't see a trace of avoidance in their eyes. They were full of fighting spirit. Suddenly, a man with unshaven hair, who looked like he hadn't washed his hair for 2 months, raised his spear and shouted, "How many of my brothers have been killed by your sea race? I'm irreconcilable to you. You want us to leave now? How is it so easy? We are willing to fight to the death with you. Avenge our brothers. Avenge our brothers. We pledge our lives to defend Calm Wind Pass. Even if I die, I won't let the oceanic race off easy. Fight! Lie fight!" As soon as the disheveled-haired man finished speaking, a commotion began to spread throughout Calm Wind Pass. In the end, everyone began to curse the oceanic race, and their filthy words filled the air. Suddenly, it was unknown who said the word battle. All of a sudden, all the words turned into this word. Thousands of words, only battle. One by one, the battle characters gathered together, forming a series of explosions. The boundless battle intent seemed to have stimulated the Oceanids, and they began to roar as well. The world suddenly became noisy. On the side of the human race, the word battle was uttered one after another. Their fighting spirits soared to the heavens, making one's blood boil. On the sea folk side, it was as if there were countless evil spirits roaring and howling. In a trance, it made people feel as if they had fallen into a demonic realm. The two voices clashed and suppressed each other. No one was at a disadvantage. Ligue and Flay looked at Bao Si at the same time. They deeply admired his ability to command troops. But what they didn't know was that even Bose felt very strange. He did not find it strange at all that the messy-haired man said. He was a bastard who joined the army around the same time as him. The first time he faced the rising tide, all his comrades in the same room had died, leaving him alone. From then on, this fellow wholeheartedly fought against the Marine race. He refused to accept any promotions or return home. He was truly a ruthless person. There was nothing wrong with this ruthless person's reaction, but why was the young man next to him also yelling loudly? His face was flushed, and his eyes were filled with flames. It was as if he had an irreconcilable enmity with the Marine race. It was reasonable to say that this lad had not even seen the Marine race a few days ago. What was going on with this group of new recruits? Bose thought that once he gave the order to let them go, these impulsive young men who joined the army would pack their bags immediately. But now, it seemed that this was not the case. Just as Bose was feeling puzzled, he suddenly saw the ruthless person pull down the young man and whisper something in his ear. Then, he saw the young man lower his head shyly and smile. Then the young man stood up and yelled loudly, jumping and jumping. He was working very hard. As for the ruthless person, he was hugging his spear and resting with his eyes closed. He didn't even shout, and he was the one who started it. When Bose saw this scene, he thought to himself, how are they comrades? They are father and son. The ruthless person said something, and the young man worked very hard, while the ruthless person slacked off with a clear conscience. The ruthless person gave his job to the young man, but the young man didn't care and even seemed to be proud. Could it be that this was the disciple who did the work? Bose looked around and realized that this kind of scene was common. It was all the veterans doing the work, but not putting in effort, while the new recruits were jumping up and down. They couldn't wait to die together with the Marine race. This doesn't seem right. Although Bose felt that it was a little strange, a word instantly jumped into his mind. Legacy. The veterans had a blood feud with the Marine race, but the new recruits didn't. But the new recruits ate and lived together with the veterans. The veterans were responsible for taking care of the new recruits and teaching them. Bose often heard the veterans chatting with the new recruits at night. Although it was called chatting, it was basically the veterans talking while the new recruits listened. The veterans would always boast to the new recruits about how many Marine race members they had killed and how they had narrowly escaped death. They would always tell the new recruits about how their former comrades were heroes and how they could fight against 10 alone, and that they wouldn't be able to catch up even if they trained for another 10 years. They would always say that Bose, this great general, had climbed up step by step with his own eyes. Without the support of his brothers, he would be nothing. Didn't you see that he didn't dare to put on airs in front of me now? Even when he spoke, he had to be polite. Bose could conclude that under such circumstances, this bunch of new recruits had already been assimilated by the veterans. Or rather, they had been brainwashed. These new recruits had never seen the Marine race before, but they hated them to the bone. They had just arrived at Calm Wind Pass for less than a year, but they already had a strong sense of belonging to this place. It turned out that all the soldiers in Calm Wind Pass had unknowingly become one. And he, the great general, didn't realize it at all. What they said was right. Without the support of these brothers, he was really nothing. Since that was the case, now was the time to respond to his brothers. Bose raised his hand, and the soldiers in Calm Wind Pass instantly fell silent. It was as if they had rehearsed this beforehand. Bose couldn't help but smile slightly. This was obviously the arrangement of those guys. When Lingjue saw this, and also asked the Marine race to quiet down. Although there was no need to say anything, he still wanted to hear it from Bose himself. Ha! Bose looked up to the sky and laughed. Did you hear that? Our soldiers want to fight to the death. You want to disrupt our morale and take down Calm Wind Pass without shedding any blood? Dream on. So what if there are no flying dragons? Our soldiers are united. Even if you have thousands of men and horses, what do we have to fear? There's no point in saying more. You marine race, quickly come and die. The morale of the soldiers in Calm Wind Pass was greatly boosted. Come and die. Come and die. Wen Lingjue looked at this scene silently. He felt that it was reasonable for the human race to occupy more than half of the resources on the continent. Wen Lingjue stood up and said loudly, "All right, since you all want to die, then I'll help you all. The time is the same. 3 days later, not even a chicken or a dog will be left in Calm Wind Pass." Wen Lingjue didn't really want those 3 days. But he was also a general who commanded the marine race. He understood the principle of morale. Once the morale was boosted, the second would weaken, and the third would be exhausted. Now, the morale of the human race was high. It was unwise to attack Calm Wind Pass now. It was better to cool them down for 3 days. After Wen Lingjue finished speaking, he smiled and was about to leave. But suddenly, a woman's voice rang out. "You're talking nonsense in front of our army, and you want to leave just like that? It's not that easy." As Flay spoke, a fire arrow magic was shot out of her hand. Fire arrow was only an intermediate-level fire magic. It was famous only for its speed, but since it was cast by Flay, a legendary expert who specialized in fire, its effect was extraordinary. Its momentum was horrifying, and it could easily burn mountains and boil seas. Flay had silently prepared this attack for a long time. Now, she made it seem like an instantaneous magic spell. Since this side had planned for a long time, the other side couldn't be unprepared. Countless water shields instantly appeared in front of Wen Lingjue. Boom, boom, boom. The fire arrows smashed through the water shields one after another with an unstoppable force. Wen Lingjue was shocked. He instantly determined that he couldn't block this arrow. Wen Lingjue didn't care about his dignity anymore. He dispelled the high platform and jumped toward the water. Although Wen Lingjue was very decisive, Flay's fire arrow was extremely fast. The human race's #1 legendary expert of fire used the fastest fire magic spell. It was as fast as lightning. Even though there were dozens of water shields blocking it, the fire arrow still reached Wen Lingjue in an instant. Wen Lingjue couldn't dodge it in time, and his shoulder was grazed. When the fire entered his body, Wen Lingjue immediately spouted a mouthful of blood. He fell into the sea miserably. The vanguard general was injured, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The Oceanic tribe was in an uproar. They all dived into the water and disappeared. When the soldiers of Calm Wind Pass saw the Oceanic tribe fleeing, they cheered loudly. Their morale was greatly boosted. Flay looked at the sea and felt a little regretful. If that arrow hadn't been aimed at his head, but at his body, Wen Lingjue wouldn't have been able to dodge it. Bose was very satisfied. He was indeed worthy of the title of a legendary expert. This was the first real confrontation between Calm Wind Pass and the Oceanic tribe, and Calm Wind Pass had lost its advantage. The human race had gained the upper hand. Chapter 248. The Oceanic tribe's vanguard general was injured, and the Oceanic tribe fled in panic. The morale of the human soldiers was greatly boosted, and their cheers shook the heavens. It was as if the human race had obtained a complete victory. When Bose saw this scene, he felt dizzy. This was the reaction of hot-bloodedness rushing to his head. "Many thanks, Lady Flay." Bose cupped his fists and bowed. The power of a legendary expert far exceeded his imagination. "Lady Flay, you really live up to your reputation," Lingjue hurriedly said. "That's what I should do," Flay said with a smile. "It's just that I didn't kill him. It's a pity." Flay's expression was calm, and she didn't care at all. It was as if she had just done something insignificant. However, Bose engraved this matter deeply in his heart. Even though legendary experts possessed extraordinary power, he knew that this matter wasn't as simple as Flay had described it to be. When Lingjue had set up so many water shields in an instant, it was obvious that he had been prepared for this. However, Lady Flay still managed to injure him. Furthermore, Fu Lei had been holding back this attack for a long time. When she suddenly attacked, it was like a sudden clap of thunder. It was so fast that it was impossible to cover one's ears. This could actually be considered a sneak attack. Even though Lady Flay's magic was powerful, and she didn't have any intention of concealing it, this was still a sneak attack. In this world, which legendary expert didn't care about their own status? Which legendary expert would sneak attack an ant below the legendary realm? No one. Firstly, it wasn't necessary. Secondly, it was really shameful. However, Lady Flay had done it. She had let go of her own status. She had held back and waited for an opportunity to strike. This wasn't something that a legendary expert should do. This was something that a soldier should do on the battlefield. For the sake of victory, they would do anything. The path of war was the path of trickery. The path of war was to catch the enemy off guard. If they could sneak attack, they wouldn't hesitate. Was Flay also moved by these soldiers? Bose thought proudly. When Ling Jue had been able to make a legendary expert launch a sneak attack. Even if he died, it wouldn't be a loss. Bose was thankful that Flay didn't care about her status as a legendary expert. However, what he didn't know was that all the legendary experts who had fought with Jilin felt that they didn't have any status. Flay was the most obvious one among them. She even felt that her Fire Dao was only a novice compared to Jilin's. She hadn't even reached the Dao. It was simply a disgrace to the name of a legend. For this reason, she even deliberately removed her title of Red Dragon. "Pass down my orders." Bao Si calmed himself down and shouted with the City Lord token in his hand. "Everyone, hurry up and reorganize. 3 days. 3 days later, we will fight to the death. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. The two of you, please come with me," Boris said. Flay looked at Boris. She suddenly felt that Boris had changed. Previously, Both had given off the impression that he only wanted to die and drag a few members of the sea race down with him. Now, if he wanted to defy the heavens, Li Gui was pleasantly surprised and said happily, "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." From this moment onwards, Li Gui and the 5 golden flying ships he brought were considered to have truly integrated into the Calm Wind Pass camp. Previously, they had always been outside of the Calm Wind Pass tactical system. Although they had fought together, they had always fought individually. After saying that, Boris turned around and walked towards the general's hall that he had not used for many years. That was to formulate tactics. It was the place where he commanded the troops. Logically speaking, it was the most important place in the Calm Wind Pass. However, he had not used it for many years. This was because Boris had fought the members of the sea race for many years and was very familiar with each other. As they fought, they had already developed a set pattern. Every year, when the tide rose, everyone would just follow the set pattern. There was no need for them to formulate any tactics. However, this year it was obvious that they would not be able to use their usual methods. Boris pushed open the door of the general's hall and walked to the main seat. Then, he asked Li Gui and Flay to take their seats. After that, he called over the commanders of the various troops and prepared to discuss official matters. When Ling Jue would not make a mistake in front of the two armies. 3 days was the final time for the human race to prepare. The arrow of fire that Flay shot out earlier was truly world-shaking. Wherever the fire arrow passed, the sea surface would be cut open and a neat crack would appear in the sea of clouds in the sky. It was as if a deity had taken a divine sword and slashed the clouds. The clouds were neatly cut open and an incomparably blue sky could be seen through the crack. At that time, if Flay had the leisure to raise her head and admire the beautiful scenery that she had personally created, she might have discovered through the crack in the clouds that in the azure sky, at an unknown height, there was an inconspicuous black that was motionless. It was impossible for that to be a bird. Birds could fly in the sky, but it was impossible for them to stay in the sky forever. That was Jilin, the humanoid Jilin. Everything that had happened before was reflected in Jilin's golden eyes. He had called the flying dragons away, and the sea race had taken advantage of the human race's low morale to enter the battlefield. This was something that had been agreed upon beforehand. The only thing that had deviated from the plan was that Jilin had acted too early. As a result, the vanguard of the sea race, when Ling Jue was not fully prepared and entered the battlefield hastily. As a result, he was hit. When they had discussed this previously, Jilin had planned to observe the human race's performance for 2 days before deciding whether or not to help the sea race. No matter what, this was Tiz's place. However, when Jilin arrived, he saw 10-odd flying dragons for people to ride. The flying dragons filled the sky. Although Jilin had never treated them as his own kind, for some reason, Jilin still felt somewhat angry. Hence, Jilin directly called the flying dragons away. The bloodline restriction that the Divine Dragon Empire placed in the flying dragons was like a joke to Jilin. Furthermore, Jilin felt that the restriction felt somewhat familiar. This feeling was somewhat similar to the methods of the dragon race. With a thought, Jilin undid those restrictions. Then, the flying dragons left the Dragon Knights behind and went to Gerda Volcano. When Lingjue did not know what was going on with the dragon god. However, he could only enter the battlefield at the last minute. Even the high platform that he used to hold up the battlefield was something that he made himself. The vanguard of the sea race did not have any extravagance at all. Fortunately, when Lingjue had prepared the water shield to protect himself all year round. Then it was what Jilin saw when Lingjue chatted with the humans for a while. Then, the sea race and the humans competed to see which side had the loudest voice. After that, when Lingjue was injured and ran away, Jilin stared blankly at the vast surface of the sea below. His mood was as lonely as the sea. After the war between the beastmen and the humans, it was acceptable for both sides to exchange pleasantries before the war started in Jilin's heart. However, you put on such a grand scene with so many people watching. Why did you say, "We'll fight again in 3 days"? The most infuriating thing was that he actually did not manage to dodge that attack. When Lingjue had commanded troops for many years, his understanding of the human heart and the use of military tactics was not something that Jilin, who had just come into contact with human culture for a few years, could understand. Of course, Jilin also disdained to understand. When Lingjue wanted to cool the morale of the humans and temporarily avoid the brunt of the attack. However, Jilin did not understand this. Therefore, a thought appeared in Jilin's mind. The life created by the dragon race's seniors was not too good. Chapter 249. Calm Wind Mountain Pass, General's Hall. Normally, no one would enter the dusty General's Hall once in a month or two. But now it was packed with people. All the high-ranking officers in the military camp were gathered in this hall. Boss sat on the main seat and looked at the expressions of his subordinates. Flay sat on his right, and Li Gue sat on his left. All the officers had been here for a long time, but they were still talking to each other. The entire hall was very noisy. These guys didn't seem to have any discipline that an army of the Empire should have. Logically speaking, there were 2 outsiders sitting beside him. At this moment, Boss should feel very embarrassed and shout to stop these unruly fellows. However, Boss didn't do that. He just watched quietly because he felt that the current situation was very normal. In fact, it was much better than what he had expected. The main force of the Calm Wind Mountain Pass, the Dragon Knights, were all gone. In the face of such a big change, these fellows were only talking to each other. They didn't complain to him, nor did they lose their cool. Bao Si felt that these old brothers had already given him a lot of face and made him proud. If he made any other requests, Boss felt that he was going too far. The officers and soldiers were noisy for a while. Then they realized that Boss hadn't said anything. They were very puzzled. You called everyone here, but you didn't say anything. What was the meaning of this? Thus, all the officers stopped talking and turned to look at Boss. When Boss saw that everyone had quieted down, he stood up unhurriedly. Just as he was about to say something, he heard a man shout from below, "What time is it? It's very urgent. Why are you still dawdling and putting on an act? There are no outsiders here. Who are you putting on an act for?" The moment these words were said, everyone was shocked. All the officers and soldiers were wondering who this man was. Who dared to scold the great general at this moment? They all turned to look and try to find out who it was. Originally, it wasn't easy to find someone to talk to among so many people. But at this moment, everyone was looking left and right. Only an old man was staring at Boss. His eyes were about to spit fire. He stood out too much and was too conspicuous. When the soldiers saw that it was this young master, They immediately understood what was going on. They quickly turned their heads and no longer looked at the old man. However, they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts, "Why is this master here today?" Just as Bose was about to speak, he was choked back. Not only that, he was also reprimanded. The great general stared, but he wasn't angry at all. He just felt a bit wronged. "You guys didn't even give me a chance to speak." Bose was not all vexed, and not really because he was good-natured. There were no kind-hearted people in Calm Wind Pass, not to mention a great general like him. It was because he was extremely close to his subordinates. Even if it was just a small pawn, he would still be able to chat with him for a while. However, he also knew that there were not many people in Calm Wind Pass who dared to criticize him to his face. As for those shameless old men, if they were willing to talk, then so be it. Anyway, they were all people who were drowned up to their necks, so he couldn't be bothered to argue with them. Bose really knew how to make himself feel better. Bose stood at a high vantage point and could see everything clearly. He recognized the person who had scolded him at a glance. It couldn't be helped. It was too easy to recognize. That old man had half of his hair, while the other half had none. The other half of his hair was also very sparse, and it was completely white. His eyes were the same as Bose. One of his eyes was completely white, and his pupils couldn't be seen. Only the whites of his eyes were left. In addition, he had an excessively old face. Bose felt that if his face could be described as frightening, then this old man's face could only be described as disgusting. Bose looked at the old man and saw that he didn't speak for a long time. He felt that it was strange. In the past, this old man would never stop scolding him with just one sentence. Bose didn't know that the old man was also muttering to himself. He had said those words in a moment of impulsiveness, and he didn't think too much about it. Only when he turned around did he realize that Li Gui and Fu Lei were still sitting on the high vantage point and watching. Since there were outsiders, it was reasonable for Bose to put on an act. After all, he was still his brother. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for him to expose him like this? Bose didn't know what the old man was thinking when he saw that he didn't speak, but he didn't bother to guess. He said, "I was wondering who it was. So it's Captain Bose. I haven't seen you for a long time, and you've become even more handsome." This old man had been the captain when Bose had just entered Calm Wind Pass. He hadn't been promoted for so many years. As for the word captain, it was purely a mockery. As for the word handsome, it was pure disgust. F***K off. Bose was so angry that he didn't care about anything else. He opened his mouth and started scolding. He didn't want to spoil this great general. Ha ha, ha. Everyone couldn't help but laugh out loud. Bose also laughed. He didn't take it to heart and said with a smile, "Half-Baldy, you usually don't come when I ask you to. You say that you're too lazy to pay attention to me. Why did you come today?" In Calm Wind Pass, old men who were as ugly as Bose were all given such a nickname. Bose was called Half-Baldy because he had lost half of his hair. "Black Hole, don't ask a question you already know the answer to." Bose shouted, "Things are different now. Now that Calm Wind Pass doesn't have any dragon riders, I'm here to see what you can do. Old Baldy, you've improved a lot. You've even learned some idioms." Bose muttered to himself, "Black Hole, what the F***K did you say?" Bose was anxious. "This daddy's eye's damaged, but my ears are more sensitive." "Yes." Bose nodded. "My eyes are damaged, so my ears are naturally more sensitive. How can I not know this?" Bose was startled. He looked at the eye on Bose's face, which had turned into a black hole, and felt uncomfortable. However, he quickly came back to his senses. He remembered that now wasn't the time to quarrel. He looked at Bose and said in a deep voice, "Are you done yet?" "I'm done." Bose's expression also became serious as he said, "What do you want to do?" Bose asked, "What can I do?" Bose said, "You're a great general, and you're asking me?" Bose's voice was trembling. It was obvious that he was furious. The great general whose reputation was at its peak was actually saying that he had no idea in front of everyone. How big of a blow was this to their morale? Bose didn't believe that Black Hole didn't understand. "Now you King remember that this daddy is a great general?" Bose wasn't in a good mood. "Tell me." Bose's anger surged. He said in a muffled voice, "What else can you do?" Fight, run, fight, run. Do you even have a fourth option? When Bose heard this, he was overjoyed. He thought that this half-bald man was indeed a veteran of Calm Wind Pass. It was actually the same as what he had thought before. Seeing that things were so accurate, it was just right for her to sing along with him, saving some effort and getting twice the result with half the effort. Bose made up his mind and said, "Then tell me again. What do you mean by fight? How do we fight? How else can we fight? Fight. Fight to the death with the sea race. Even if we die, we have to drag a few of them down with us to vent our anger," Bose said. These words raised the morale of the other soldiers, and they all shouted, "Fight to the death with the sea race." The crowd was furious. However, Bose didn't even look at them. He raised his hand to suppress their voices and asked, "Then what do you mean by run? Are you AF *** king idiot? Right now, we don't care about anything. Just pack up and leave. Go back to your homes. Run for your lives." Bo's words were unpleasant to the ears. It hurt everyone's face too much, and it immediately made the soldiers furious. Some of the more hot-tempered ones even cursed it out loud. They were probably saying that Bose was taking advantage of his seniority and looking down on them. However, when Bose looked at them indifferently, they didn't dare to make a sound. "Then what do you mean by fight?" Bose continued asking. Bose grinned and smiled sinisterly. "It means to stay and fight with your life on the line. If you want to run for your life, run for your life. No one cares about anyone else." These words made him look down on them even more. The soldiers all cursed it out loud. If it weren't for the fact that Bose was a senior and was old, they would have already started fighting. This time, Bose didn't stop them. He looked at the half-bald man and suddenly felt very touched. This old brother actually thought of the same thing as him. What is a bosom friend? This is what it is. The words that he wanted to say, that he didn't want to say, were all said by the half-bald man. Look at the reaction of this group of brats. If he said these words, wouldn't this group of people go against their superiors? Bose couldn't help but feel his eyes heat up. He was shocked. He quickly calmed himself down and extended his index finger into the hole on his face. He felt a bit of moisture. Bose took out his index finger and looked at the teardrops on it. He thought that he had never cried since he lost this eye. He didn't expect that tears could still flow out from this hole. It was really strange. Just as Bose was feeling strange, he suddenly realized that everyone had quieted down. He raised his head and looked over. He saw that everyone was staring at him and swallowing their saliva. When they saw the great general's actions just now, everyone felt their scalps go numb and their bodies turn cold. Even Flay felt a bit uneasy. As for Ligouet, he coughed repeatedly. Bose was stunned. He knew that his actions just now had shocked these people. He didn't think too much about it. He looked at Bose and said, "If I say run, will you run? Run your uncle. Why would I run? Could it be that your mother is waiting for me at home?" Bo's words were extremely unpleasant to hear. Mother *** cur. Bose almost couldn't control himself. "Let me ask you again. If I say fight or fight, what will you do?" "If you say fight, then I will go back to sleep now." "If you say fight, then I will tell those old brothers," Bose said. "Then you can go back to sleep now." Bose suppressed his anger and said, "You mean?" Bose opened his eyes wide. He was pleasantly surprised. "Get lost." Okay, Bose left. However, the hearts of the other soldiers were set. It was because the general had decided that they had to fight this battle. Chapter 250. In the general's hall, the soldiers exchanged glances and discovered a resolute glint in each other's eyes. Since the general already showed a clear stance, many things would be easy to handle. The wavering morale of the soldiers was no longer a problem. Now, the only problem was how to fight. Since Calm Wind Pass did not have any flying dragons, they would have to change their strategy. Otherwise, this General's Hall meeting would become meaningless. "Brothers," Bose said. Everyone focused their gazes and looked at Bose. "Although our Calm Wind Pass lost all of our Dragon Knights, we still have a chance. However, I do not think that we have no chance of victory." The moment Bose said this, he saw some of the soldiers secretly shaking their heads. The soldiers thought to themselves, "We have already fought for so many years, yet the general is still treating us like ignorant children." We are speechless. They wanted to fight, but they did not believe that they could win in such a situation. However, this was not a good time to undermine the general. Hence, no one said anything. Ha! Bo smiled faintly when he saw the situation. What's wrong? Brothers, you don't believe me? The soldiers' gazes immediately changed as they looked at Bo's. They thought, why does the general ask when he already knows the answer? Does he want us to lie through our teeth? Do we want to put on a show with you? Acting is fine. However, the problem is that everyone here is smart. Who do you want to put on this show for? When Bo saw the expressions of the soldiers below, he understood. He smiled faintly and said, "It is true that we do not have any Dragon Knights this year. However, we also have 3 new forces that are not weaker than the Dragon Knights." As Bo spoke, he gestured at Fu Lei and said, "My Divine Dragon Empire's legendary expert, Lady Fu Lei." Earlier, Lady Fu Lei defeated the enemy on the wall with one move and severely injured the Sea Folk's vanguard when Ling Jue. It is unknown whether when Ling Jue is dead or alive, but the Sea Folk fled. You all saw this with your own eyes, right? When Bose mentioned this, the soldiers became spirited. This matter raised their spirits. When Ling Jue had been flaunting his prowess at Calm Wind Pass for so many years, the human soldiers already hated him to the core. However, they could not do anything to him. Today, they finally saw him suffer a setback. Fu Lei stood up and nodded at the soldiers, saying that they were all heroes who fought bloody battles for the common people. Even though he was a legendary warrior, he still hadn't come to Pingfo Mountain Pass for a long time. It really wasn't too good of him, and he couldn't compare to the generals and heroes. When the soldiers heard this, they felt that a legendary master was actually lowering himself to such a low level. They all felt flattered. Lady Flay is too modest. Since you are here, there is nothing else for others to say. That's right. What's more, he had just arrived and performed such a miraculous feat, severely injuring when Ling Jue and sweeping away the resentment in our hearts for many years. Flay only returned to her seat after everyone was done being polite. As a legend rank expert, Lady Flay's strength is indeed unparalleled. Her reputation is well-deserved. However, no matter how strong Lady Flay is, she is only one person. The Oceanids have tens of thousands of them. Someone in the crowd said such a sentence, spoiling the mood. Everyone's expression stiffened. Some of the more direct ones were already speechless. It seemed that no matter when and where, there would always be such people. While everyone was in high spirits, he took the opportunity to pour a bucket of cold water over their heads, drenching you until your body and mind are cold. Then, they would tell you nicely that this was to help you recognize reality. We didn't know that Lady Flay couldn't stop all the oceanic tribes. Do we need you to tell us that? If Lady Flay could wipe out the oceanic tribes alone, she would have come alone. Why are we still here? You are right, Boss said. Even if Lady Flay is unparalleled, she can't defeat the endless oceanic tribes. Therefore, we have a second helper, Middle Empire's Prince Li Gui. I believe that you have already seen the Middle Empire's golden spaceships. With the help of the Middle Empire, the sky of Calm Wind Pass is still in our hands. Ever since the third prince, Li Yu, successfully seized the throne, Li Gui was automatically promoted from the Great Prince to the Great Prince. Li Gui stood up and cupped his fists toward the soldiers. The soldiers all returned his greeting. I'm afraid that 5 golden spaceships won't be enough. The man who poured cold water on Flay stood up again. Li Gui smiled faintly and said, "You are right. I have already explained the situation here to the Middle Empire's Golden King." His Majesty replied that if the Hero King agrees, he will send more golden spaceships. How many? A soldier asked. 200. How many? Boss was shocked. This was the first time he had heard of this. 200, Li Gui said seriously. 200 golden spaceships. What did this mean? Boss wasn't sure. How much of the Middle Empire's strength was this? Boss didn't know either. However, he knew that this force was much stronger than the Calm Wind Pass itself. This was Boss's polite way of saying it as the commander of Calm Wind Pass. Actually, it wasn't just much stronger. If Calm Wind Pass didn't use any tricks, the 200 golden spaceships could flatten Calm Wind Pass. If what Li Gui said was true, and this force really reached the walls of Calm Wind Pass, then they might really be able to fight the oceanic tribes head-on. 200. Boss didn't know what to say. He could only say, "I can't thank you enough. General, there's no need to be so polite." Li Gue bowed. At the same time, he thought that the 200 golden spaceships weren't borrowed for free. As for the price, there was no need to tell Boss. Since that's the case, open up the supply area of Calm Wind Pass. The spaceships must be supplied properly. Boss shouted. Yes. All the soldiers were in high spirits. General, if it were just 5 spaceships, it would be fine. But 200, we don't have enough manpower. The brother who poured cold water on them was always so calm. No need to worry. Boss waved his hand. His Majesty sent us reinforcements earlier. There are more than 50,000 of them, and they are in charge of supplying the spaceships. It should be enough. Then may I ask, General, what is the third force? Adventurers, Boss said. Adventurers? The soldiers were shocked. Isn't that a group of... The soldiers stopped halfway. As for the other half, it was obvious that it wasn't anything good. Yes, there are countless adventurers right behind us. Although they don't have much discipline, their individual strength is probably above ours. They are a surprise force, Boss said. No. A soldier firmly objected. I don't feel confident fighting alongside them. Who knows if they will suddenly cower when they enter the battlefield? Yes. Moreover, if they come, they might disrupt our deployment. Yes. General, please reconsider. That's enough. This was the first time Boss had stopped the soldiers, and the effect was obvious. Regarding the adventurers, I have my own considerations. It definitely won't affect you all. Don't worry. Since Boss had said so, the others naturally couldn't say anything. However, everyone had a serious expression on their faces. Obviously, they didn't feel reassured just because of Boss' words. Do you all really think that with the addition of those adventurers, it will disrupt my deployment? You all. Boss sighed. Aren't you looking down on this city too much? The Calm Wind Pass you see is only the tip of the iceberg. The soldiers looked at each other, wondering why the general was speaking nonsense. General, what do you mean by that? Calm Wind Pass is known as the #1 pass in the world. Do you all really think that it is a simple, tall, and long city wall? Boss smiled. The soldiers frowned. What else could it be? Calm Wind Pass was known as the #1 pass in the world. Wasn't it because it was the longest and tallest? The soldiers wanted to ask more, but when they saw the expression on their general's face, they immediately dismissed the idea. That smile was unfathomable, and when paired with Boris's terrifying face, it made people shudder in fear. The general's expression was already very clear. People who couldn't understand him didn't deserve to stand in the general's hall. I have a secret, but I won't say it. Don't ask anyone. Anyone who asks can try. No one wants to try in the endless sea, in the pitch-black deep sea without a trace of light. This was an abyss that was unknown how far away it was from the surface of the sea. It was a forbidden area for humans. Humans couldn't see or breathe here. Moreover, they would be instantly crushed into a thin meat patty by the enormous water pressure. Therefore, this place could be said to be absolutely safe for the oceanic race. One Lingjue was currently lying on a rock at the bottom of the sea. His eyes were closed and his brows were trembling. It was as if he was enduring some kind of great pain. If they weren't at the bottom of the sea, they would be able to see that bean-sized beads of sweat were unceasingly flowing out from his forehead. However, in this place, the beads of sweat would melt into the sea water and disappear. When Lingjue was currently treating his injuries, although Flace arrow had only grazed him, an incomparably large amount of fire energy had still entered when Lingjue's body. Now it was wreaking havoc without end. The accumulated power of a legend rank expert was no small matter when Lingjue was unable to suppress the scorching heat within his body. He simply felt as if there were flames burning within his body. If he weren't at the bottom of the sea, the place with the densest water element in the world, when Lingjue believed that he would have already been burned to death. Despicable humans. A dignified legend rank expert actually dared to launch a sneak attack when Lingjue thought hatefully in his heart. Just as when Lingjue's eyes were tightly closed and he was gnashing his teeth and cursing Flay, a figure quietly appeared beside him. The figure lowered his head and looked at Wen Lingjue. He ignored the pressure of the sea and the endless currents. Tisk! The figure looked at Wen Lingjue and clicked his tongue. The disdain in his eyes was incomparably clear. Next, the figure moved his finger and a cluster of flames drilled out from Wen Lingjue's body. The flame instantly covered the bottom of the sea. Countless creatures instantly fled because they had never seen a trace of light in their entire lives. Flay's methods were indeed extraordinary. This flame actually burned for a while at the bottom of the sea. It was incomparably miraculous. When Lingjue suddenly felt his body become light and the scorching heat within his body completely dispersed, he felt indescribably comfortable. Next, he took a deep breath and opened his eyes. When Lingjue instantly saw the figure beside him, and he was startled. He thought that it was someone from the same race. However, when he took a closer look, Wen Lingjue was startled again. Wen Lingjue hastily got up and knelt on one knee. He said in a trembling voice, "Lord Dragon God." Chapter 251. Lord Dragon God. Wen Lingjue was very nervous. He stuttered and lowered his head. He didn't know why Jilin suddenly appeared here, but he could clearly feel that the Lord Dragon God was in a bad mood. Wen Lingjue's feeling was right. Of course, Jilin was in a bad mood. How could he be in a good mood when a fire dragon fell into the water? "You're the leader of the sea race?" Jilin asked. "I don't dare." Wen Lingjue hurriedly lowered his head and said, "Lord Dragon God, I'm Wen Lingjue, the vanguard of the sea race army. Lord Dragon God, thank you for your help this time. I can't thank you enough." Wen Lingjue said this very uncomfortably. Just the way he addressed himself, he had changed it twice in a short sentence. The sea race could be said to be born noble in the sea. He really had never lowered himself like this before. However, he was facing the dragon god, an existence on the same level as the ancestor god. He was the true god of the sea race. Therefore, no matter how low Wen Lingjue lowered himself, it wasn't too much. Jilin was a bit strange. He tilted his head and asked, "You've seen me before?" "Never seen you before." "Then how do you know it's me?" This sounded like a philosophical question that humans pondered when they were bored, but in fact, it wasn't. Our sea race was created by the ancestor god. Lord Dragon God appeared in front of us, so we naturally know, Wen Lingjue said respectfully. Actually, there was no such mysterious reason. It was just that the sea race was created by dragons, so they were naturally afraid of dragons. Now, in front of Jilin, Wen Lingjue only felt like there was a mountain in his heart. His hands and feet were cold, and he trembled with fear. This was an innate fear, like a mouse seeing a cat. Wen Lingjue guessed that in this world, only the Lord Dragon God, that the Ocean Emperor had mentioned before, could form such a suppression on a sea race like him. Wen Lingjue, Jilin called, "Lord Dragon God. Previously, I made an agreement with an old man in blue clothes. As long as I call away the flying insects of Calm Wind Pass, the sea race will attack Calm Wind Pass. Do you know about this?" Wen Lingjue's expression turned bitter. Of course he knew about this. But the problem was the Ocean Emperor told him that it would be a few days later. Although Wen Lingjue cursed in his heart, he didn't dare to say it out loud in front of Jilin. He couldn't possibly point at Jilin's nose and curse him, saying that if he hadn't activated it in advance, how could he have been so hasty? He had caused him to be plotted against by a human expert, and the morale of the oceanic race had been greatly damaged. Of course, Wen Lingjue could not say these words. Because of the nature of his race, he clearly knew that if Jilin wanted to kill him, he would not even be able to move. Thus, he could only swallow his words and reply, "I know." "Then why didn't you hit him? Why is the fight scheduled for 3 days later?" Wen Lingjue lamented in his heart again. He thought to himself, "How can you understand this matter if I tell you? Moreover, why would a god like you care about such trivial matters?" Replying to Lord Dragon God, "This is a stalling tactic. We spread the word that those who abandon the city will not be killed. Then, we give the humans 3 days. This way, the humans are all cowards, and their morale will definitely be in chaos. After 3 days, we will attack Calm Wind Pass. It will be much easier with half the effort. When Jilin heard this, he couldn't help but be amused. He felt that this oceanic race's way of doing things was more human-like. This was very rare among other races. You're quite familiar with how humans do things. When Lingjue thought to himself, how can I not be familiar with this? After all, we have been fighting with humans for decades. Thank you, Lord Dragon God, for your praise. May I know why Lord Dragon God has personally appeared? I hope Lord Dragon God can enlighten me. I will definitely die 1,000 times without hesitation. Jilin felt that this oceanic race's words were very respectful, but a little too complicated. If it wasn't for Staya teaching him these things, he definitely wouldn't have understood it when he just came out of the Red Dragon Palace. Just as he thought about Staya, Jilin suddenly felt his heart throb. Jilin felt very strange. Every time he felt this way, something would definitely happen. If it were a human, they probably wouldn't care about it. However, Jilin was different. He was a dragon, a supreme life form in the boundless world. He could compete with the gods and subdue demons. Naturally, there weren't many things in this world that could tug at his heartstrings. If it wasn't the collapse of the heavenly Tao, it would be the snow in June. Jilin thought to himself for a while. He thought to himself, even if the sky fell and the earth split, I will be fine. Why should I care? Right now, I should focus on dealing with this divine dragon empire. This group of weak humans is always riding that thing and flying around, flaunting their prowess. Just looking at them makes a dragon angry. None of them will have an easy time. Jilin became ruthless for no reason. He looked at Lingjue and said, Are you confident in 3 days? Absolutely. I hope Lord Dragon God can rest assured. When Lingjue said loudly, The humans have a woman who uses fire. You don't seem to be able to defeat her. You're too weak. Jilin recalled the time when this fellow was beaten to the point where he had to flee. When Lingjue's face twitched twice, he thought to himself, Lord Dragon God is really reserved with his words. How does this seem? Lord Dragon God, this is easy to handle. Although the legendary expert is strong, she can't deal with my sea race's numbers. Jilin frowned. He thought to himself, that's fine too. I see that you can control the water. Jilin asked, Yes, not only this person, but all the sea race can control the water. Jilin thought to himself, that's right. Earlier, that old man said that the sea god helped the sea race. It is not strange that I can control the water. In that case, why don't you just use the water to create a tsunami and flatten that calm wind pass? Jilin asked, when Lingjue felt stunned. He did not know what Lord Dragon God meant. He thought to himself, even if I can control the water, I can't create such a huge wave. Perhaps Her Majesty the Sea Emperor could, but thinking that if he said that, Jilin would definitely ask, then why doesn't the Sea Emperor just flatten Calm Wind Pass? He said directly, Lord Dragon God, you don't know this. The humans built this Calm Wind Pass to guard against our sea race's ability to control water. The word calm wind are not just for show. There is an ancient formation in Calm Wind Pass called the Calm Wind Formation. Within the range of this formation, the wind is calm and the waves are calm. So, no matter how big the waves are, they cannot get close to Calm Wind Pass. But now, thanks to Lord Dragon God's grace, there are no more flying insects in Calm Wind Pass. My sea race brothers can definitely break into Calm Wind Pass. Break the formation. At that time, the Sea Emperor and the sea race will create a huge wave together. We will definitely destroy Calm Wind Pass. Jilin nodded. He had nothing more to ask, but he suddenly remembered that he was too excited just now. He added, try to be quick. Be careful. Chapter 252. When Lingjue didn't know what Jilin meant. Why did he want to be faster? What did he mean by delay? As far as he knew, the lifespan of the dragon race was unimaginably long. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they lived as long as the heavens. Therefore, it wasn't a problem for the dragon race to sleep for more than 10 years or even dozens of years once they closed their eyes. But what was wrong with the dragon god? 3 days should be really insignificant to him. It was really a snap of the fingers. Why couldn't he wait for this little bit of time? when Ling Jue couldn't guess Jilin's thoughts. He could only raise his head and observe Jilin's expression. But there was no Jilin in front of him. There was only a ball of flame burning in front of him. When Ling Jue was shocked, because they were at the bottom of the sea. It wasn't strange that there was anything here, but there couldn't be fire. But that ball of flame burned so fiercely and so unreasonably, as if the surrounding endless seawater didn't exist. Compared to the ball of flame that Jilin pulled out from his body, it was many times stronger. When Ling Jue looked at that ball of flame and was shocked, he swallowed hard and finally turned to leave. He merged into the water and disappeared. He didn't know why Jilin was so concerned about the battle at Pingfeng Pass. And when Ling Jue's eyes, Jilin was a god. He should sit above the clouds and watch the world indifferently. To be able to see everything in the world and be indifferent to everything at the same time, this was the way of a god. When Ling Jue couldn't figure it out, so he didn't think about it anymore. He only made up his mind to fight the battle in 3 days. For the long-cherished wish of the sea race, and also for the god's instructions. Living beings couldn't recklessly guess the god's thoughts because it was too dangerous. Therefore, living beings could only listen to the gods before they had the ability to resist the god. No intelligent being was willing to entrust their lives to the happiness and anger of other living beings, because the risk was too great. On this point, the sea race and the human race were the same. No, it was better to say that all living beings in the world were like this. Actually, when Ling Jue was right, things like Jilin did like to stand on high places. Jilin stood above the 9 heavens, overlooking the sparkling waves below. The grand city wall that was called the number 1 pass in the world was only a fine black line in his eyes now, and it was truly not worth mentioning when compared to the vast and misty ocean. But it was this line that divided the territories of the sea race and the human race. The plan that Jilin had been planning for a short period of time was almost ready. He would use the equipment of the dwarves to arm the beastmen, obtain the divine artifact, and lead the other races to attack the humans. But now, it seemed that the elves wouldn't stand on his side, but that wasn't a big deal. Without the elves, the other races could still take half of the humans' territory and share the world with the humans. Now that the artifact was about to be completed, the humans had a saying, "Everything is ready except for the east wind." Jilin felt that it was very appropriate to use it here. Now, the oceanic race was very suitable to become the east wind. An empire like the divine Dragon Empire, which he found annoying with a single glance, was very suitable to make an example out of and declare war on the humans. Just you wait, human. You won't have many days to occupy the world and abuse your power. The more Jilin thought about it, the happier he became. In the end, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. His loud laughter was like thunder, scattering countless floating clouds. The dragon's roar shook the heavens and the earth. At the same time that Jilin's heart suddenly palpitated in the ocean, on the Elven Island, a blonde woman lying in a jade-green spring water slowly opened her eyes. Staya regained consciousness and slowly sat up in the spring of life. She looked around blankly. Following that, memories flashed through her mind like a picture. The forest, the bandits, the young man from the Church of Light, Aisha, Jilin, God's descent, sacrifice. She gave it her all and raised the hammer of victory. That was her strongest attack, and the target was the godlike dragon. The pictures stopped abruptly. Countless memories appeared at the same time, and Staya's head hurt a little. She frowned and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, a dreamlike scene appeared in front of her eyes. Pure white stone buildings, lush green plants could be seen everywhere. The plants and the buildings blended together perfectly, and at the same time, there was an endless aura of life around her. Staya made a judgment in her heart. Suddenly, she heard a violent panting sound beside her. Staya turned around and saw Bane beside the spring. He fell to the ground and stared at Staya with his eyes wide open. He was panting like a cow, and tears were streaming down his face. Staya smiled and stood up from the water. She was only wearing a long white dress. The dazzling sunlight shone through and vaguely revealed her perfect body. Plus, her long hair was as dazzling as gold. It was so beautiful, like a dream. It was as if an angel had lost her wings and landed in the human world. However, Bane wasn't in the mood to appreciate this beautiful scene. He was only thinking about one thing. Staya was really alive. Staya walked to his side and gently touched the scar on his eye. You've been through a lot, too. It must have been hard, right? Staya said gently. What else could Bane say? He just kept nodding. He couldn't say anything, and his tears didn't stop. Staya smiled when he saw this and said, But why are you all so dead? So this is the Elf Island? Staya looked around and avoided Bane's gaze. Even for her, an awkward expression appeared on her face. Yes, Bane said. We were able to cure you this time because the Elf Queen was willing to lend us the spring of life. I'm actually not dead. Staya sighed softly, and there was actually some disappointment in her voice. Yes. Are you the one who found the legendary Elven Island? Yes. Bane didn't hold back. Did you get the scar on your forehead because of that? Well, not all of it. You've grown a lot. Yes. You brought me here? No, it was Jilin. Jilin. I see. I failed. I didn't destroy his clone. Bane didn't say anything. He just shook his head slowly. He had asked Jilin about what happened that day more than 30 times. Every time he mentioned it, Jilin was surprisingly patient. He didn't miss any details. It was as if he wanted to prove that he was a good dragon and didn't want to hurt the human princess. Therefore, Bane was very familiar with what happened that day. It was as if he was there. How long has it been since that day? Staya asked. Almost 2 years. Is he back? Staya asked. She was obviously asking about Jilin's real body. He's back, Bane said. Staya let out a long sigh. Although he was unwilling, he wasn't shocked or surprised. This was an expected failure. How long has he been back? Almost 2 years. The biggest trump card of the Middle Empire couldn't even control him for a few days? As expected of him, Staya said. Where is he now? I don't know. Bane shook his head. But if he's not at Ruiyun City, then he's at Pink Phone Pass. Staya was stunned. She knew about Pink Phone Pass, but what was Ruiyun City? Why isn't he here? Why is he at Pink Phone Pass? Staya asked. The Elf Queen didn't let Jilin come, Bane said. Can the Elf Queen stop Jilin? Staya asked. Jilin can't defeat the Elf Queen, Bane said. Jilin doesn't dare to come. How is that possible? Staya looked at Bane for a long time. Then she said slowly, Is that true? Yes. Bane nodded heavily. Staya was shocked by the news, but she still didn't believe it. She couldn't imagine anything in this world that could defeat Jilin. When she used the God of Light's power, she was already above the legendary level. But even so, she couldn't even take down a clone that Jilin casually made. Staya asked Bane to tell her the details of the battle between the Elf Queen and Jilin. But as the saying goes, a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. Bane had learned from Ouyang Ju in the Middle Empire for a while. He was no longer the same as before. When he told the story, it was very vivid. When he told himself that he was happy, he couldn't help but dance with joy. Bane told Staya in detail about how the Elven Queen had beaten Crimson Lyn to a pulp with 50 to 60 divine weapons, and how she had been frightened out of her wits. He said things like heaven and earth moved with one arrow. Megalosaurus was terrified. The mirror of the sky broke the dragon's breath. The Elf Queen's veil weakened the dragon's power. God stood behind the Elf Queen. Megalosaurus ran away at the sight of the Elf Queen. In short, she didn't leave any face for Jilin. In Bane's description, Jilin and the Elf Queen were not at the same level at all. They were completely crushed. Jilin could escape with his life because the Elf Queen was beautiful and kind. Bane also knew that he was exaggerating. He knew that the Elf Queen couldn't kill Jilin, but there was nothing he could do. Once he started telling the story, he couldn't stop. Embellishing the story was also the ability of Mr. Ouyang, the leader of the literary world in the Middle Empire. But Staya didn't doubt it at all. Firstly, she had just woken up, and her brain wasn't very bright. Secondly, in her heart, it seemed that only such a person could defeat Jilin. If that's true, then if the Elf Queen is willing to help us. Staya couldn't help but mumble to herself. Just as Staya was pondering, a warm, spring-like voice sounded behind her. I'm sorry, Saint of Light. Chapter 253. Stilla suddenly turned around and was stunned for a moment. Even she had never seen such a beautiful woman. She was so perfect that she didn't look like a human being. She must have been created by the goddess of life herself. Staya couldn't help but exclaim in her mind. Then Staya noticed the queen's long and pointy ears. She was an elf, an ally of the humans in the ancient times. Staya, who was familiar with all kinds of ancient books, immediately made a judgment. Plus, she was wearing a crown on her head. Your Majesty, Elf Queen. Staya lifted her skirt and bowed slightly, making an ancient and elegant bow. The Elf Queen smiled and bowed slightly. Your Majesty, Saintess of the Light. Staya was dazed. She didn't know why the Elf Queen was so polite to her. Saintess of the Light has just woken up. How do you feel? The Elf Queen asked. Her voice was light, and it sounded like she was in a good mood. I feel great. Thank you for saving me, Elf Queen. I'm very grateful, Staya said. Haha, it's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. It's also because the Saintess is favored by the God of Light, the Queen said. Your Majesty, you're too humble. Staya bowed again. But, Your Majesty, you said that it's a pity. What do you mean? Haha. The Queen smiled again. I was rude earlier. I accidentally heard the Saintess talking to herself. It seemed like she wanted to use me to destroy the Red Dragon. Well, Staya hesitated. Although Jilin was called the Red Disaster by the humans, Staya knew that he was still young and immature. He was just an invincible child. Many things couldn't be blamed on him. He just lacked someone to tell him what was right and wrong. Moreover, he was the one who had captured him and treated him well. Staya attacked Jilin without hesitation because it was just a clone. But now, according to Bane, if the Elf Queen was to attack, Jilin would have no chance of survival. However, if the Queen was not allowed to make a move, there would be no other creature in the world that could suppress Jilin. This way, all humans would live under the shadow of Red. Just as Staya was struggling with her thoughts, the Elf Queen ended all of Staya's fantasies. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do, said the Elven Queen. Why? Staya's eyes widened. The Elf Queen pointed at Bane and said, What this human said to you is true. However, he was exaggerating my strength. He should know that I couldn't kill the Red Dragon on Elf Island. When I fought with the Red Dragon earlier, the Red Dragon was carrying a human. After my most powerful attack, the Red Dragon was still able to ensure that the human was unharmed. I really can't do anything. Jilin is holding you? Staya turned to look at Bane. Okay. Bane nodded. Staya glared at Bane fiercely. She meant that this was a huge matter that concerned the entire world. Why did it sound so untruthful and embellish the story? Bane's heart skipped a beat. The princess looked so pretty when she was angry. It had been a long time since he last saw her. But you only shot 2 arrows. Staya didn't want to give up this hope. She meant that the Elf Queen had more powerful attacks that she hadn't used yet. Doubting someone right in front of them was a very rude thing for the Elf Queen. However, the Elf Queen didn't mind at all. She said patiently, I have a sapling of the world tree. It's a small world. When it's used as a bow, it's indestructible. The power of the world will condense into the bowstring. Even if there's no arrow, just lightly plucking the bowstring will cause the enemy to be hit by the power of the small world. Not to mention, I have arrows. As the Elf Queen spoke, 3 golden arrows appeared out of thin air. Bright burning gold. It's a metal refined from burning star cores. It's the proud work of the god of craftsmanship. It contains the power of stars and can easily travel through space. It's as powerful as a shooting star and can attack enemies 2 or 3 worlds away. This is indeed my most powerful attack. Staya and Bane were completely stunned. The Elf Queen's words were too exaggerated. It was even more exaggerated than the myths of the humans. Even the sacred book of the Church of Light, the #1 religion of the human race, didn't dare to write something like this. Staya was stunned for a while. She regained her senses and mumbled, Such a powerful attack can't do anything to Jilin. He should be more powerful than all of you think, the Elf Queen said. Did you just say that you can't kill Jilin on the Elf Island? Yes, it's too far away. He won't dare to step onto the Elf Island. After all, dragons are all afraid of death. Then you can leave the elf island. According to the ancient contract, I can't leave the elf island. As the saintess of the light, you don't even know this? The number of humans is ridiculous, and the inheritance has never been broken. But what have you inherited? A lot, but most of them are useless. No wonder the humans are so ignorant now. But even so, I'll still stop him. I won't let him do whatever he wants. Humans should bathe in the sunlight and not live in the shadows and fear. Staya said. The him was obviously referring to Jilin. Well said, the elf queen said. But you might fail. The possibility is very high. It doesn't matter. Even if I fail, I'll still do it. The belief will be passed down. As long as the belief doesn't disappear, people will continue to follow us. We'll succeed in the end. Hearing this, Bane was shocked. He thought that it had been a long time since he heard such words that seemed to be able to dispel the fog in his heart. Maybe Staya was this kind of person. Even if her words didn't have any real content, and she didn't mention any methods, just some words like slogans were enough to convince everyone. She was enough to make people follow her without caring about their lives. But the elf queen wasn't a normal person. She wouldn't be convinced by a few words. But you'll definitely fall. You can't protect yourself in front of that red dragon. You're too weak. One after another, someone has to take the lead. I'm willing to do so. Haha, these words are so familiar. The elf queen laughed. Justice, love, fearlessness, light, justice. Are these the inheritance of the saintess of the light? Looking at you, I feel like I'm looking at Sokophia. Humans should bathe in the light. She said that before too. It's exactly the same as what you said. Staya's eyes widened. Her face was filled with shock. Bane looked at the two through the white veil in front of him. He asked carefully, who's Sokophia? Staya stared at him again and said, she's the first saintess of the light, a legendary person. You're a citizen of the Saimai Empire. How can you not know this? Our village is rather poor. You've seen it. The Empire should have policies to support the education of the children. Indeed, every child is given a sacred book of light. They rely on it to learn how to read. But the sacred book of light didn't say who the first saintess was. The sacred book of light was used to record the teachings of the miracles. Of course, I wouldn't write about this. Staya was choked by Bane's words. She almost couldn't breathe. You've seen the first saintess? Staya ignored Bane and turned around to ask. Of course. We're old friends. How can you not know? Could it be that the human race has forgotten about the age of gods? I know. The documents of the Church of Light did record that the elf queen and the first saintess were friends. But I didn't expect it to be you. I thought that after so many years, the elf queen would have to be replaced. The elf race has a long lifespan, the queen said. But I didn't expect it to be so long, Staya said. I'm special even among the elf race. Obviously. Then, what are you going to do now? The queen asked. I'm going to find Jilin. If he goes to the Divine Dragon Empire, countless lives will be in danger. Staya said. Chapter 254. Wise decision, the queen said. If the red dragon goes to Calm Wind Pass, it will definitely cause a lot of trouble. Bane blinked, feeling confused. But I can't just let you go, the queen said. Why? Staya asked. Because you're too weak, you can't stop him, the queen said mercilessly. Staya was silent, because she knew that the queen was right. Humans, after expelling the gods, you have also become depraved. The queen looked at Staya and sighed. Back then, Sokophia was on par with me. But now the saintess, the first saintess is so powerful. Staya was shocked. The first saintess was on par with Jilin. Yes, the queen nodded. But after a moment of silence, she added, of course, I'm much stronger now than I was a few thousand years ago. For some reason, Staya heaved a sigh of relief. Since the queen of the elves said a lot, then it must be a lot. Staya calmed herself down and said, the first saintess is a genius. Of course I can't compare to her. No, unexpectedly, the queen of the elves shook her head. Your potential isn't below Sokophia's. There's only one reason why there's such a huge difference between you two, and that's because times have changed. Times have changed. That's right, things are different now. The gods have all left this world, and the connection between humans and gods has become thin. Even if humans are blessed by the gods, the effects are minimal. Divine powers, divine arts, and the like are greatly reduced, the queen said. So it's very simple if you want to become stronger. You're the saintess of light, the representative of light. You just need to establish a connection with the god of light. Staya didn't speak because she had nothing to say. That was a fantasy. If it was so easy to meet the god of light, then the Church of Light would have dominated the world long ago. Jilin was no longer a threat. The Elf Queen saw through Staya's thoughts and said, "If it's somewhere else, I'm sure the Elf Queen will be happy." Of course not. But this is the Elven Island, the only place in the world with a demigod, and the only place in the world that still has a connection with the gods. Staya and Bane looked at each other and saw the endless shock in each other's eyes. Even now, humans still haven't completely gotten rid of the gods? 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The vanguard of the sea species, Wenlingjue, once again led countless sea species troops to Calmwind Pass. Without the threat of the wyverns, Wenlingjue felt a sense of relief that he had never felt before. He could finally stand in front of the two armies and loudly read the Sea Tribe's declaration of war. "You humans have betrayed us, violated the treaty, and forcefully occupied the Sea Clan's territory. Today, the Sea Clan's great general, Wenlingjue, is under the orders of the Sea Emperor, Tisk." Flay stood on top of the wall. She looked at Wenlingjue, who had a loud voice and was in high spirits. She clicked her tongue. "What's wrong, Lady Flay?" Boss asked. "It's fine if he didn't die, but how can he come out unscathed?" Flay said hatefully, "Impossible." In Flay's opinion, as long as the fire arrow 3 days ago could injure Wenlingjue, even if he didn't die, he would still suffer from serious injuries. He wouldn't be able to get out of bed for at least half a year. But now, Wenlingjue is, after all, the Sea Tribe's great general, and he has an extraordinary status in the Sea Tribe. Maybe the Sea Tribe has some miracle medicine that is especially effective against fire injuries, and they gave it to him. "It's not strange," Boss said. Flay furrowed her brows and nodded slowly. She accepted this statement, but she still felt that something was amiss. It was reasonable, but legendary experts weren't ordinary. How could they have such a miracle medicine? Since this matter was abnormal, there must be a demon behind it. After a short while, Wenlingjue, who was surrounded by countless Sea Tribe members, finished reading the Sea Tribe's declaration of war that he had been yearning for. Then, he raised his head and looked at Boss. He meant that he had finished speaking, and it was now Boss' turn. Previously, Flay had launched a sneak attack on Wenlingjue, causing him to suffer heavy injuries. This was why Wenlingjue learned his lesson and was now very far away from Calmwind Pass. Moreover, there were countless defensive measures in front of him. This was why Boss couldn't see that Wenlingjue was looking at him. However, Boss was able to clearly sense it. If there really was such a thing as spiritual friends in this world, and if it was said that we have been spiritual friends for a long time even though we haven't met each other, it wasn't just a polite way of saying it. Then, Boss and Wenlingjue, who commanded the armies of the two races and who had fought against each other for dozens of years, were definitely the most representative pair. Boss knew that Wenlingjue was waiting for him to speak, but he didn't say anything. He just raised his arm and waved it lightly. Calmwind Pass opened fire. Countless black cannons stretched out from the city walls and started to rain down flames that reached the sky. The explosions were deafening, and they didn't stop. The boundless sea was turned white by the bombardment. Countless splashes of water could be seen. Wenlingjue had never spoken in front of the two armies. It wasn't that he didn't want to speak, but that the Sea Tribe members didn't have the right to speak in this world. The Human Dragon Knights wouldn't give him the opportunity to speak. Perhaps, after he spoke, countless dragon flames would come crashing down on him. This was why Wenlingjue cherished this opportunity. But Boss didn't. He didn't want to indulge in this hobby. At the same time, he also knew that his subordinates were of one mind and united against a common enemy. He didn't need to raise their morale. So, Boss chose to attack directly. The war between the human race and the Sea Tribe, this year's rising tide, had truly begun. Jilin, who was standing in the clouds, looked at Boss a few more times. and his eyes revealed a look of admiration. In Jilin's opinion, the two sides each had a long speech before the battle. It was really superfluous. They had already brought thousands of soldiers and horses to kill their way over. Was there any room for negotiation? What else was there to say? They just had to fight. Jilin didn't understand. Could it be that there were really people who thought that just by relying on their silver tongue, facts, and reasoning, they could force the enemy's millions of soldiers to retreat? According to Jilin's knowledge, the last human who thought this way had already been cursed to death in front of the two armies. As for the person who had scolded him, he was the one who had a silver tongue. Although the human race's attack was very unreasonable and sudden, this was after all the most brutal battlefield in the world. The Sea Tribe soldiers couldn't be so careless as to let their guard down and be ambushed by such an attack. The moment before the cannonballs landed, countless amounts of seawater enveloped the Sea Tribe soldiers, forming a protective barrier. It was blue and very beautiful. The sea would always be the Sea Tribe's strongest natural barrier. Let's begin. It's time to take back what belongs to us, when Lingjue said in a gloomy voice. Prepare the water cannons. Fire. Following Wen Lingjue's order, countless water pillars shot out from the sea. The power of the water pillars was unparalleled, and it seemed like they could easily reach the top of the Calm Wind Pass. However, when the water pillars were 1 mile away from the Calm Wind Pass, they all seemed to hit an invisible barrier. None of them could truly reach the Calm Wind Pass. Boss looked at the water pillars that were as thick as bronze bells, and his expression was gloomy. Such a large amount of water could actually reach such a high place. One could only imagine how powerful it was. Boss didn't dare to imagine how much damage it would cause to the human race if these things really landed on the top of the Calm Wind Pass. Fortunately, the Calm Wind Pass had the Calm Wind Formation. Within the Calm Wind Formation, everything was calm. Chapter 255. The might of the Sea Race's water cannons was unparalleled, and when they hit the Calm Wind Formation, they shocked countless humans. Even Flay couldn't help but raise her eyebrows, and she was astonished by the might of this thing. What is this? The Sea Race's weapon? Flay asked. It's quite obvious. Both nodded. Flay rolled her eyes helplessly. Of course I know that this is the Sea Race's weapon. The reason why I said this is because I hope that you can explain in detail what kind of weapon it is. Of course I know this, but the problem is that I have never seen this thing before, Both said with a grave expression. What? This time, Flay was really startled. Even you have never seen it before. How can this group of beasts be so patient? Patient? I don't think so. Both shook his head slowly. On the battlefield, no one will hold anything back. Otherwise, the soldiers would have died in vain. It wasn't that they didn't want to use it, but that they couldn't. The flying dragons really suppressed the Sea Race thoroughly. That's right. When Flay heard Botha's words, she immediately understood. It was surely because of the Dragon Knights. The flying dragons were the bane of the Sea Race, and they made it so that the Sea Race couldn't even set up a slightly conspicuous formation. Some large weapons that couldn't be moved easily would be destroyed by the dragon flames as soon as they showed themselves. However, after thinking about it, the Sea Race still persisted in attacking the Calm Wind Pass every year, even though they were in such a disadvantageous situation. Therefore, Flay sighed emotionally. Both didn't deny it. How can we fight an opponent that even you don't understand? Flay asked. Both shook his head again. The Sea Race that could attack with all their strength was unknown to anyone, and there were no traces of them. They could only counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. Fortunately, Both also knew how to fight this way. Countless water pillars shot out from the boundless sea, and there were countless of them. Although the humans' attacks never stopped, none of them could escape the Sea Race's rain of bullets. The human race had been completely suppressed. When Lingjue saw this scene, he felt that all the resentment he had in his life had disappeared. The Sea Race had the upper hand, and the humans couldn't fight back at all. They could only hide in the Calm Wind Pass. This was one of the rare occurrences among the countless high tides that had occurred. The sea folk had finally gotten rid of the awkward situation where they could only passively take a beating. When Lingjue was very proud. In front of him, There were countless sea race weapons and water cannons hidden everywhere on the turbulent sea surface. This kind of weapon could be seen everywhere in the sea tribe, but this was the first time it was used in a war against the human race. The design of the water cannon was ingenious. Each water cannon could absorb a large amount of seawater and shoot out such a powerful water column. In this sea, the sea folk had an endless supply of ammunition. Wen Lingjue felt even more relaxed and happy. He thought to himself that without the help of the flying dragons, the human race was really not worth mentioning. In this way, the dragon god's request would definitely be fulfilled on time. Just as when Lingjue thought that victory was within his grasp and was feeling pleased with himself, he heard the sound of water splashing behind him. This was the endless sea, the place with the most water in the world. It was not surprising to hear the sound of water. But this water sound was different because it was out of tune with the surrounding environment. It didn't sound like the natural sound of water. When Lingjue looked back and saw a beautiful woman in a light blue dress standing on the waves. The surrounding sea folk all knelt down in front of her and were extremely respectful. Wen Lingjue was also shocked when he saw her. He hurriedly stood up and lowered his head slightly. "Your Highness, why are you here?" When Lingjue said this, even Jilin, who was high up in the sky, could not help but look down. The dragon race was always very sensitive to the word princess. Moreover, Jilin always felt that the one he caught was not a proper princess and wanted to change to another one. Jilin looked down and retracted his gaze. The princess was indeed a princess, but she was not human. "Big brother Lingjue, no need to be so polite. Father saw your message and knew that the human race sent out a legendary powerhouse. He specially ordered me to come and help you," said Wen Xiong. Wen Lingjue was very polite and called Wen Xiong princess. On the other hand, Wen Xiong was very easygoing and directly called Wen Lingjue big brother. This was not a method that the human royal family often used to buy people's hearts. It was the truth. Wen Xiong and Wen Lingjue had played together since they were young. The sea folk were all family. "Thank you for your concern," said Wen Lingjue. "Big brother Lingjue once said in the letter that you were seriously injured and almost had to give up your position as the vanguard. Thanks to Lord Dragon God's help, you were safe?" said Wen Xiong. "Yes," said Wen Lingjue. "Big brother, you saw Lord Dragon God?" "Yes." "What did Lord Dragon God say?" "So that's why you came?" "It's related to Lord Dragon God. We have to take it seriously. Since your Highness is here, then the sea folks' attitude is very clear. We have no other choice." "Yes, what did Lord Dragon God say?" "He said, for us to hurry up. He seems to be in a hurry." "In a hurry?" "Lord Dragon God's lifespan is as long as the heavens. A few decades in his phlegm is just the blink of an eye. What's there to be in a hurry about?" "How would I know?" "That's true. Lord Dragon God should not be presumptuous. In that case, big brother Lingjue, let's begin." "Yes, with your Highness' help, it'll be twice the result with half the effort." After Wen Lingjue and Wen Xiong finished speaking, they slowly closed their eyes and sank their feet into the water. A blue light was emitted from their bodies and gradually spread out in the sea. It was as if a giant beast that had been sleeping had quietly awakened and slowly opened its eyes. An incomparably majestic aura suddenly filled the world. Although nothing happened for the time being, all the humans had the same thought at the same time. This sea was alive. Then, the earth began to tremble and rumble. The human soldiers glanced at the backup weapons placed by their feet. They were jumping on the ground, and the arrows collided with each other, making clanking sounds. The long swords and the scabbards kept jumping as if they were alive and wanted to break out of the scabbards. The human soldiers were incomparably nervous as they stared at the sea folk without blinking. At this moment, a storm was about to come. After the earth trembled for a while, a white line appeared in the distant horizon. All human warriors let out a sigh of relief at the same time. Although they could not see it clearly, they all knew that it was a huge wave. They had all seen it a few days ago. It was a huge wave that represented the beginning of high tide. The wave was very, very high. It was higher than Calm Wind Pass. Such a monstrous wave was enough to easily destroy any human city, whether it was the capital or the Wind Moon City. However, the human soldiers were not afraid, because Calm Wind Pass had the Calm Wind Array. Only Bao Si's gaze focused. He knew that the sea folk knew that the huge wave was useless, but when Ling Jue still used it, it was not that simple. Chapter 256. The sea race's water cannons didn't stop. They were like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, and they launched a torrential attack on Calm Wind Pass. The humans' cannons were endless, and rumbling sounds echoed out. They fired mercilessly at the surface of the sea. However, although the two sides were fighting fiercely, they didn't have any practical use. The humans' attacks couldn't surpass the sea race's water cannons. It didn't matter whether they fought or not. The sea race's attacks couldn't penetrate the calm wind formation, but it was still somewhat effective compared to the humans' attacks. It had the effect of intercepting the enemy's attacks. However, the sea race's new attack was about to arrive. It had the power to destroy heaven and earth, and it seemed as if it wanted to break this irritating balance. The two sea races' combined forces created a giant wave that was twice as big as the one from a few days ago. It covered the sky and covered the sun. Even Calm Wind Pass seemed small and weak in front of this giant wave. It was like a flood that could destroy the world. When Flay saw this giant wave, she couldn't help but feel uncertain. Would Calm Wind Pass be able to withstand such a giant wave? Flay looked at Boris with a questioning gaze. Boris sensed her gaze, and he was full of confidence. He said calmly, "It's fine. This isn't a matter of whether the wave is big or small. No matter how big the wave is, it will be suppressed by the calm wind formation." When Flay saw that Boris was so confident, she could only nod casually. However, she was still somewhat worried. How could this be called a wave? Did you call a tsunami a giant wave? Moreover, this wave was 10 times bigger than a tsunami. The calm wind formation could definitely suppress the wave, but could you suppress this? If you used a wooden stick to beat a dog, it would be just right. However, if you used it to beat a wolf, wasn't this a bit sloppy? The humans weren't the only ones who were shocked by this wave. Even the sea race's side felt excited. When Ling Jue saw this giant wave, he felt very proud. He thought to himself that even if he couldn't break the calm wind formation, he would still be able to satisfy the dragon god. Jilin, who was in the sky, also saw this giant wave. However, he just glanced at it and couldn't help but shake his head. What the hell was this? Was he trying to show off with just this little trick? In human words, wasn't this like a child playing house? What a disgrace. Something's wrong. Bose kept staring at the huge wave. He felt that something was wrong. Based on his understanding of Ling Jue, things were definitely not that simple. So he did not dare to let his guard down for even a moment. Only now did he exclaim in surprise. "There's something in the water." Boss shouted. Fry was shocked. How could there be anything in the water that could evade the senses of a legendary expert like her? Even the one-eyed Boris had noticed it, but he hadn't. Fu Lei also hurriedly focused her attention and looked toward the tsunami. She saw numerous black figures hiding in the water. They were densely packed. "What is that?" Flay asked. "It should be the oceanic race." Boris said, "Sea race? Why are they hiding in the waves?" The Calmwind Mountain Pass can calm the waves, but the sea creatures can ride on the waves and fly into the Calmwind Mountain Pass. This was how they had entered in the past. It's just that in the past, with the suppression of the Dragon Knights, there weren't so many waves and there weren't so many sea folk. Then should I burn them all to death? Lord Flay, don't be anxious. You're our trump card. We have to leave it for them. Now, it's time for the great lord to take action. After Boris finished speaking, he turned his head and looked toward Flay. Flay nodded her head and waved her delicate hand. A flame blossomed from her hand and soared into the sky. In the end, it exploded into a beautiful flower in the sky. Boris's eyebrows trembled, and he looked at Flay speechlessly. Although he had said that the signal used to notify Li Gui should be conspicuous and special and shouldn't be confused with other explosions, there was no need for her to make a lotus flower appear in the sky, right? It would spoil the austere atmosphere of the battlefield. Perhaps it was a woman's nature to love beauty, and even legendary experts were no exception. Flay's signal was indeed a bit exaggerated. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that it was conspicuous and special enough. Less than 3 breaths' time after the fireworks were extinguished, countless golden spaceships from the Middle Empire slowly flew out under everyone's shocked gazes. The huge ship broke through the clouds and whistled through the air. Its powerful aura shook everyone's heart. It was as if it could shatter space itself. Countless majestic warriors from the Middle Empire walked around the golden spaceships. It was obvious that they were well-trained. However, compared to the golden spaceships, they were like ants compared to a towering tree. They were so insignificant that they weren't worth mentioning. That was because those weren't just spaceships. Those were the Middle Empire's heavenly fortresses. The golden spaceships lined up in a row, and their shadows covered the entire calm wind pass. Li Gui stood at the bow of a dragon-grade spaceship. He was no longer dressed casually. His armor was neat and tidy, and he was fully armed. He stood there solemnly and gave off an awe-inspiring aura. He had the air of a great general. After all, he was the only prince of the Middle Empire in the generation of the Third Prince, who had truly led an army into battle. Li Gui came out. When he saw the huge wave, he instantly understood. He made a prompt decision and gave the order to attack. 200 golden spaceships opened fire at the same time. Countless bullets rained down on the huge wave. This was a real hail of bullets, and it was earth-shattering. Under such a hail of bullets, even if you had thousands of soldiers and horses, you wouldn't be able to return alive. The explosions of the cannonballs reverberated throughout the world, and the huge wave was gradually reduced. The marine race hiding in the huge wave let out blood-curdling screams that sent chills down one's spine. Some marine race members started to jump down from the waves, avoiding the cannonballs and falling into the sea. However, a large area of the sea was still dyed red, but it was instantly covered by the waves. Under the turbulent sea, who knew how many lives were lost? Countless lives were lost, and this might just be the beginning. Slowly, a sky-reaching wave was flattened by the unreasonable human beings. The remaining small waves were also blocked by the wind-calming formation, so there was no need to mention them. The cheers and calm wind pass shook the heavens. One Lingjue wiped the sweat off his forehead and let out a long sigh. To him, raising that huge wave had consumed a lot of energy. However, it was useless. Wen Xiong looked at the golden spaceships in the sky and asked, "That's the new weapon you mentioned?" "Yes, that's right. This is the first time I've seen a spaceship that can fly in the sky," Wen Lingjue said in a low voice. "It's indeed powerful. As for the biggest ones, even if I personally attack, I'm afraid I can only take down 1 or 2 of them," Wen Xiong said. "But, big brother Lingjue, you didn't say there were so many of them before." "I just found out too," Wen Lingjue said. "The humans actually held back. The enemy has the absolute advantage and is looking down from above. It's disadvantageous for us," Wen Xiong said. "That's not a big deal," Wen Lingjue said. "It's always been like this anyway." "That's true," Wen Xiong said. Wen Lingjue looked at the 200 golden spaceships in the sky, his mind spinning. It was like a huge mountain pressing down on his heart. It was so heavy that he couldn't breathe. Wen Xiong said she could take down 2 of the bigger ones, but when Lingjue admitted that he could only take down 1 of the smaller ones, he thought that without the Dragon Knights, the marine race would be able to easily take down Calm Wind Pass. He didn't expect the humans to have such a powerful trump card, as expected of a race that had occupied half of the world for many years. They had such a deep foundation that it was truly amazing. The humans are not worth mentioning without the Dragon Knights? Such thoughts had already been completely erased from his mind. The humans, in terms of combat power, were without a doubt the #1 race in the world. Some people said that having the courage to admit the strength of the enemy was also an excellent quality. Although when Lingjue wasn't a human, he obviously had such an excellent quality. When Lingjue looked up at the sky, he wasn't looking at the sky, but at the Lord Dragon God, who he couldn't see but should be looking at them from the sky. When Lingjue thought to himself, "Lord Dragon God, you should have seen the terrifying trump card of the humans. right? In this way, Lord Dragon God should understand the difficulties of the marine race, right? He wouldn't say things like, hurry up, anymore, right? Jilin lay in the air, his hands hugging his head, looking very comfortable. The 200 golden spaceships of the humans naturally couldn't escape his eyes. He knew about those things before they even reached Calm Wind Pass. At this moment, the golden spaceships made a grand entrance, taking the limelight for a moment. Jilin only took a few glances and then stopped looking. He didn't like these things. To Jilin, flying in the sky without wings was an affront to the sky. It was an invasion of the territory of all creatures flying in the sky. However, Jilin didn't plan to deal with those things himself. He would leave it to the marine race. After all, they were just toys for the humans, not worth mentioning. Chapter 257. The two members of the sea race and the sea race joined forces to create an unprecedented wave. There were countless sea race hidden inside, but in Jilin's eyes, it was a bit embarrassing. After the third prince ascended to the throne, he became much more magnanimous. He did not care about the national defense of the Middle Empire and sent almost all the golden spaceships over. Wen Lingjue's confidence in winning was instantly destroyed. But Jilin was disdainful, thinking that it was not worth mentioning. This wasn't because Jilin was invincible and looked down on them from above. Jilin knew that these two races still had more powerful forces that they had not used. This level of war could not be considered real swords and spears. In the human race, Jilin had experienced the sacred city's sacred formation. That was a formation that used all the resources of the Church of Light and the Semite Empire. It could pin Jilin to the ground and make him unable to move for a while. He also saw the Snow Wind Empire's mobile city, the bright snow divine weapon. With a step, the mobile city could cross 2 mountain ranges. The bright snow divine weapon was even more powerful. Thousands of bright snow divine weapon could blast a god black and blue. In the Middle Empire, Jilin had experienced the Great Tranquil formation. That was not a formation, but a portal to another world. Even Jilin gasped in amazement at that thing. There was also the Sea Race's all-creation origin city. It was usually hidden in the water and could rise to the surface at any time. The Sea Race's main camp. It could be said to be an ingenious work of art. After seeing the full strength of the two races and their many trump cards. Now, these things naturally could not enter Jilin's eyes. Although Jilin looked at the battlefield with disdain, there were also people whose minds were shaken by this scene of artillery fire and fire. Roar looked at the golden spaceships in the sky through the gap of the white helmet. He had not seen this thing in the Middle Empire, because according to the laws of the Middle Empire, if there was no special reason, this thing could not fly above the city. Roar was so excited that his eyes were brimming with tears. How proud was he to be born as a human? What a strong human race. Presumably, even the Red Disaster will be blasted to death by these spaceships. Roar thought to himself, if Roar despised this war because he had set his sights too high, then the reason he had such thoughts was purely because he had seen so many spaceships and his blood had rushed to his head. Why didn't he think about it? If these spaceships could solve the Red Disaster, why would the God of Light personally descend to the lower realm to let him be the hero? Why would the previous Golden King, Li Zheng, let him come to the Divine Dragon Empire instead of patting his chest and saying heroically, "Young man, you can go home now. Leave the Red Calamity to the Middle Empire. We have 200 golden spaceships. A mere Red Calamity is nothing." What if he said that? Just as Raul was daydreaming about the Red Disaster being blasted to death by the golden ship's cannons, a hand suddenly reached out from behind him and patted him on the back at an untimely moment. Although Roar's thoughts were running wild, he was still on the battlefield. After all, he still had his guard up. It was not to the extent that he would not notice if someone patted him from behind. However, even if Roar sensed it, he did not dodge. Instead, he allowed the hand to land on his shoulder. This was because Xiao Chun knew that the people standing behind him were all his comrades, heroes who dared to risk their lives for Calm Wind Pass and the Divine Dragon Empire citizens. Compared to the previous group of adventurers who fled when they saw that the situation was not good, It was a world of difference. Roar pretended not to notice. He turned around and looked at the person behind him. It didn't matter at first glance, but his originally warm and smiling face instantly turned gloomy, as if he had eaten a dead fly and was unsightly. This was because that person was the Simi Empire's Wang Yin, who had left earlier. Roar suddenly clenched his fists. Only then did Xiao Chan realize that there was no place in the world where there were only heroes and honorable men. There were no despicable people who would forget righteousness at the sight of profit. Perhaps these two were interdependent existences to begin with. Without the latter, the former could not be seen as a hero. Without the former, the wretchedness of the latter could not be seen. "Why are you here?" Roar asked sullenly. "Didn't you leave earlier?" Wang Yin could not see the rich changes in Roar's expression hidden under the helmet. Still, he said casually, "Brother, this is a long story. Originally, a large group of us had already left. However, guess what happened halfway?" To think that Wang Yin was still in the mood to keep Xiao Chun in suspense. Roar raged. He only snorted coldly and ignored Wang Yin. Although the atmosphere of the conversation was a little awkward, this was nothing to Wang Yin. Wang Yin continued. "We hadn't gone far when we saw many large ships flying towards us from the sky. We were shocked. At that time, no one knew what they were. Fortunately, there were adventurers who had been in the Middle Empire for a long time who told us that these were the Middle Empire's weapons. We immediately understood. The weapons of the Middle Empire could penetrate so deep into the Divine Dragon Empire. They must have the Divine Dragon Empire's permission. In addition, they were flying in the direction of Pingfeng Pass. So, you think that Calm Wind Pass will have a chance to fight with such powerful reinforcements that aren't any weaker than the Dragon Knights? That's why you came back." Raul didn't wait for Wang Yin to finish his sentence. However, his words were a little harsh and blunt. However, Wang Yin did not mind at all. He laughed and gave her a thumbs up. "Good job. As expected of someone from the Simi Empire. You can understand everything with just a hint." Roar took a few deep breaths. The thick white armor on his body heaved violently. He admired Wang Yan's shamelessness. He was so straightforward in his pursuit of advantages and avoidance of disadvantages that he didn't even bother to hide it a little. Roar stared at Wang Yan. Looking at his blue eyes, which were unique to the people of the Simi Empire, his heart could not help but twitch. Roar sighed in his heart. It was as if his endless anger had floated out with this sigh. His heart calmed down a lot. Luo Air looked around and lowered his voice. Using the nicest tone he could muster, he said to Wang Yin, "Big brother Wang, if you're only here for the money, then I advise you to leave now. It's going to be very dangerous from now on. Even if you and I are at the 6th rank, we will be nothing more than a drop of water in the storm. Whether we live or die, it will not be up to us. Moreover, it will be useless. Brother, from your words, it seems like there's a hidden meaning. What do you know? Hurry up and tell me," Wang Yin said. "Big brother Wang, you've been gone for 3 days. During these 3 days, those of us who did not leave naturally knew a lot. The Calm Wind Mountain Pass also told us a lot. Brother Wang, do you know what we adventurers are going to do next?" Roar asked. Wang Yin shook his head with a serious expression. "It's the vanguard." Roar said, "This is what the Calm Wind Mountain Pass said. We adventurers will be the first to engage the sea race in close combat. We will use our powerful individual strength to strike down the sea race's arrogance, inflict heavy casualties on the sea race, and intimidate the sea race so that they won't dare to engage in close combat with us." Wang Yan's face was filled with shock. He sucked in a breath of cold air and gave an incisive summary to Roar's words. "You want us to be cannon fodder?" Roar frowned. He felt that this was not a good way to put it. But in the end, he slowly nodded his head, because Wang Yin was right. Chapter 258. Wang Yin looked at Roar and nodded, the shock in his heart becoming even more intense. "You're doing this too? In a war of this scale, the first troop to engage the enemy will definitely not survive." Wang Yin roared in disbelief. He could never have imagined that the commander of Pingfeng Pass would be so shameless, so immoral, so much so that he, the helpers, would become cannon fodder. Wang Yin was so agitated that he forgot to suppress his voice for a moment. Many people in the surroundings heard his shout. The people around him looked at him coldly, their eyes full of disdain. There will always be sacrifices in war, and there will always be someone who needs to be the first to wield the sword. We are willing to be the first to wield the sword. Roar said, "So, Brother Wang, you should leave while you still have the chance." Wang Yin was momentarily shaken. He stood there, not knowing what to do. However, as if to prove Roar's words, the sound of a huge object moving suddenly rang out. Wang Yin was shocked and hurriedly looked back. He saw a thick and heavy door slowly closing. A group of well-trained soldiers appeared behind them, holding sharp swords in their hands, their eyes filled with cold, killing intent. There was a huge door behind Wang Yin. Previously, he had used this door to enter this camp that was right next to Kamwin Pass. In this huge camp, there were all the adventurers from before. Wang Yin was stunned for a moment and asked blankly, "What's going on?" Roar looked at him with pity, but after looking through the white helmet, all that was left was the coldness of the armor. "It's too late. You can't leave anymore." Roar said, "The moment that door closes, we will be the temporary soldiers of Ping Fong Pass. We will be under the command of Ping Fong Pass." "What do you mean we can't leave anymore?" Wang Yin asked in a trembling voice. "Are you saying that Ping Fong Pass will force us to stay if we want to leave?" Roar shook his head slightly and said helplessly, "I've already said that we are the temporary soldiers of Ping Fong Pass." "So what?" Wang Yin was clearly a little confused. "Big Brother Wang, you are also a person who has traversed the continent and can be said to be experienced and knowledgeable. But have you ever seen an army that can let deserters escape unscathed? All human armies have such a rule. Deserters will be killed." Roar's last word, "kill," was spoken with such conviction that Wang Yin could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. But Wang Yin opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. However, Roar had already reached out and patted him on the shoulder, stopping him from speaking. "Big Brother Wang, there is usually another rule in the army. It's called those who disturb the morale of the army die." Wang Yin held his breath and turned his head to look at those who were holding sharp blades. As expected, several soldiers were already looking at him with unfriendly expressions. Wang Yin felt bitter in his heart. Even though these soldiers added together would not be enough to take him down with one hand, but even if Wang Yin was given a few more guts, he would not dare to attack these soldiers at this time. Roar looked at Wang Yin's distressed expression. After all, he was still young and his heart softened. He comforted him. "Big Brother Wang, since you're already here, just take it as it comes. After all, you were the one who wanted to come, right? How can this be the same? Previously, we came and went as we pleased. Now we are fighting with our backs against the river. One step back and we will die, and we will be hacked to death by our own people. How can this be the same?" Wang Yin said in a low voice. Roar did not say anything and only nodded silently, indicating that he was right. Looking at Wang Yin's anxious expression, Roar truly felt that General Bose, the general of Ping Fong Pass, was an extremely wise person. Just as Roar was sighing to himself, there was a sudden sound, and the door of Ping Fong Pass opened. This was the first time Ping Fong Pass allowed these adventurers to enter. Wang Yin turned his head to look at Roar, his eyes filled with bewilderment. Roar, on the other hand, looked straight ahead and walked towards Ping Fong Pass with his head held high. Wang Yin was startled. He turned back to look at the soldiers and finally shook his head helplessly. He gritted his teeth and followed after Yu Zhong. This was the first time most of the adventurers had come to the #1 pass under heaven. At this moment, they could not help but look around curiously. Following the soldiers who led the way, they made many turns and finally arrived at the top of the walls of Ping Fong Pass. The moment they stepped onto the walls of Ping Fong Pass, the salty sea breeze blew onto Roar's face through the gaps in his helmet, bringing with it the distinct smell of blood. Roar looked towards the sea. A magnificent scene of war unfolded before his eyes. The golden spaceship's cannons were like a rain of fire that could destroy the world. The Sea Tribe's water cannons were also firing back with all their might. Both sides were exchanging blows. The sea water was boiling, as if it was the end of the world, The boundless sea tribe was really like what the light sacred scripture said. They were evil spirits that crawled out of the abyss, vainly trying to invade this world. They roared ferociously and brandished their sharp claws, wanting to bring endless calamity to the world. Roar's mind was somewhat unstable. He stopped looking at the battlefield and turned his head to avoid it. However, he suddenly saw Flay in the distance. It was not that Roar's eyes were good. Instead, Flay stood out too much among the soldiers of Ping Foam Pass. It would be hard for him not to stand out among a group of soldiers wearing the standard armor of the Divine Dragon Empire when he wore a bright red magician's attire. When Roar saw her, he fixed his gaze on her and frowned. Although Wang Yin could not see Yu Zhong's gaze, when he looked in the direction of Yu Zhong's helmet, he knew that Yu Zhong was looking at Flay. This was because there were only two people worth looking at in that direction. One was Flay, and the other was the one-eyed general beside her. There was nothing worth looking at for the remaining people. They all looked the same with their masks on. Even their parents would not be able to recognize them. As for that one-eyed general, Yu Zhong could not look at him. After looking at him once, Yu Zhong did not want to look at him a second time. It is indeed rare to see a legendary expert of the Divine Dragon Empire, Wang Yin said. However, what time is it now? Quickly take care of yourself. Don't get distracted. I can't see her face clearly here. Is that really Lady Flay? Roar asked. Definitely. This is Ping Foam Pass. Aside from the Hero King, she is the only other person in the entire Divine Dragon Empire who can stand side by side with the commanding general of Ping Foam Pass, Wang Yin said. Roar continued looking at Flay. It was not because he had never seen a legendary expert before that he stared at her. As a human hero, even though Yu Zhong had not matured yet, he had seen all kinds of people. He had even seen the Light God before. The reason Yu Zhong stared at Flay like this was because he had received news when he left Auspicious Cloud City that the Red Dragon Church was going to launch a large-scale attack on Auspicious Cloud City. The leader was the Red Dragon Church member whom Yu Zhong had met in the tea house, Hidden Shadow. This legendary expert, before Yu Zhong, was the founder of the Red Dragon Church. How could Roar not feel complicated and stare at her a few more times? Fortunately, Roar knew that Geraint City's city lord had already set up many traps to deal with the situation. It would be fine if the Red Dragon Church did not come. However, if they dared to come, Geraint City's city lord would definitely make sure that they did not return alive. Auspicious Cloud City would be absolutely safe. Brother, what are you doing? Wang Yin could not help feeling startled when he saw Roar staring at Flay. He feared that his fellow countrymen would offend Lady Flay, so he reminded him, "You will be discovered if you stare at a legendary expert like that. That is too disrespectful." Wang Yin had just spoken when Roar vaguely saw Flay turn her head in his direction. Roar felt flustered. He resisted the urge to turn his head and directly closed his eyes. A legendary expert is indeed incredible. She can even detect this? Roar thought to himself. Wang Yin could not see if Roar's eyes were open or closed. However, seeing that his helmet did not move, Wang Yin thought that he was still looking. Wang Yin said anxiously, "Brother, stop looking. The abilities of a legendary expert are not something you and I can imagine." Roar secretly agreed. He felt that Wang Yin's words were reasonable. Do you know? This Lady Flay is not an ordinary legendary expert. All legendary experts are extraordinary, Roar said. This person is different. This is a human who founded the Red Dragon sect in just over 2 years with his own strength. Some people even say that the Red Dragon Church has already become the world's #2 religion, second only to our Church of Light. Think about it. What kind of method is this? Wang Yin said. He wanted to let Roar know that the person in front of him was someone who was at the end of the world. She was not someone ordinary people like them could look up to. Since Yu Zhong could not imagine the power of a legendary expert, Wang Yin should be able to tell him about her power. Roar thought to himself, I already know this. Seeing that Yu Zhong was unmoved, Wang Yin continued, I recently received news that the Red Dragon Church has taken over a city in the Divine Dragon Empire. Roar was stunned. His heart seemed to skip a beat. He suddenly turned to look at Wang Yin and asked in a low voice, Which city is it? It seems to be Auspicious Cloud City. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? This is the information that we adventurers heard. It's absolutely true. That's impossible. Was Auspicious Cloud City really taken over by the Red Dragon Church? That's right. Is the Auspicious Cloud City Lord still doing well? Brother, what are you saying? As the Lord of a city, she will naturally live if the city survives. If the city falls, she will die. Chapter 259. Roar placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and clenched it tightly. His leather gloves rubbed against the hilt of his sword, producing creaking noises. Even though Yang Ling didn't want to believe Wang Yan's words, he knew in his heart that Wang Yan was right. For someone like City Lord Geraint, if his city fell, then he definitely wouldn't be able to survive. Why was it that good people didn't have long lives in this world? Why was it that evil people always got the upper hand? If God saw it, why didn't he stop it? Why didn't he show the righteousness of heaven? If God couldn't see it, then why was he called a god? Red Dragon Sect. Roar squeezed these words out of his gritted teeth. His voice was low and faint, but it was filled with killing intent. Flay raised her brows and glanced in Roar's direction. What's wrong? Boris looked at Flay and said, You've looked over there twice in such a short time. It's nothing. Flay shook her head and didn't pay any more attention to Yongling. If this place wasn't the Calm Wind Mountain Pass, but a desolate wilderness, Flay would have already thrown a fireball at him. Fine. Boris was helpless. He looked at the soldier beside him and asked, Are you ready? General, we've been ready for a long time. Raise the sea path. Boris looked in Lingjue's direction. Yes. A rumbling sound rang out, covering the sounds of fighting and explosions that filled the sky. It was as if the whole world was shaking. The human clan and the oceanic clan simultaneously slowed down their attacks, carefully guarding against everything around them. Soon after, stone pillars with a diameter of 0.5 meter rose from the sea surface and stopped when they reached the sea surface. The stone pillars covered the entire surface of the sea in front of Calm Wind Pass. It was as if a stone floor had been placed on the sea's surface. For some unknown reason, the space between the stone pillars was just big enough for a member of the sea tribe to walk through. The ground rose from the sea, and there was still the sea on the ground. Even Flay couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at such a large-scale method of changing the terrain. Spectacular! Is this the method used by Calm Wind Pass to fight the sea tribe? A battlefield where the sea tribe and Calm Wind Pass could have a fair fight? It's a pity. Boss sighed. You may not believe it, but it is said that this is a place where the human race and the sea tribe had friendly exchanges many years ago. It was a mechanism jointly commissioned by the sea race and the human race to be made by the dwarf race. It was a place where the sea and land intersected, to prove that the friendship between the sea race and the human race is everlasting. How ironic. Yes, countless stone pillars rose, and a place where land and sea met appeared. Such a grand scene obviously stunned both sides. What does this mean? Wen Xiong looked at Wen Lingjue. This is Boris challenging us. Wen Lingjue said with absolute certainty. Then what should we do? Wen Xiong asked. Send out the strongest warriors to completely crush the human race. Beat them until they lose their will to fight. Raise the prestige of the sea race. Wen Lingjue suddenly became excited. Your Highness, what do you think? Wen Xiong was obviously very satisfied. The Vanguard General's response is very appropriate. Wen Xiong was very satisfied, and so did Wen Lingjue. However, some people were dissatisfied. Jilin watched from the sky as this group of people fought for 3 days without any pain or itch. He had long since become impatient. Now, when he heard that Wen Lingjue still wanted to talk about such useless things with the human race, he immediately became angry. Jilin was like a falling meteor. His body was burning fiercely as he fell from the sky. He turned into a straight red flame and instantly streaked across the sky. He landed next to Wen Lingjue. He set off huge waves and blew away countless members of the sea race. If it weren't for Qi Lin's caution, this attack alone would have killed countless members of the marine race. It was more than what the humans had killed in the past few days. That power was countless times stronger than the humans' artillery fire. It was like a real natural disaster. The humans didn't understand what had happened, but this didn't stop them from letting out earth-shattering cheers after being stunned for a short moment. Even Boris was stunned. What had happened? He was fighting with the enemy, and then a meteor suddenly fell from the sky and smashed the enemy's general to death. This was something that countless generals didn't even dare to dream of, something that they had dreamed of. How could he have King encountered it? Could it be that the heavens had opened their eyes? Did the gods show themselves? Is it too late for me to believe in a god now? Boris slowly turned his head and looked at Flay. Flay stared at the place where the flame fell. She didn't even turn her head. The red dragon sect welcomes you. What god do you believe in? Nonsense, the red dragon god. Then, forget it. Boris was shocked, but he was still clear-headed. Lord Dragon God. When Lingjue and Wen Xiong quickly lowered their heads and knelt down when they saw who it was. When Lingjue wondered why he came at this time. However, Jilin didn't let him think too much. He took 2 steps and arrived in front of Wen Lingjue. He grabbed his clothes and lifted him up with one hand. Lord Dragon God. Wen Xiong covered her mouth in shock. Are you an idiot? Jilin stared at Wen Lingjue. He had spent the most time with Aisha, and he had inevitably learned some things from her. For example, the word idiot. Lord Dragon God, what do you mean? Wen Lingjue had difficulty breathing, but he still tried his best to speak. He was afraid that if he didn't speak, Jilin would strangle him to death. Jilin narrowed his eyes. In the end, he still threw Wen Lingjue back into the sea. Previously, you told me that it would be easy and that humans weren't worth mentioning. Is this what you meant? Wen Lingjue's expression turned bitter. Lord Dragon God, please calm down. I didn't expect that the human race would have such a powerful trump card. I underestimated the human race. Lord Dragon God, please punish me. Lord Dragon God. Wen Xiong immediately became anxious. Jilin turned his head and glanced at the human race's camp. What trump card? Wen Lingjue looked at Jilin and said cautiously, Lord Dragon God, can't you see the spaceship flying in the sky? Jilin felt a burst of anger rush to his head. Trash, Jilin said coldly. Wen Lingjue didn't know what to say. It turned out that the golden spaceship that he and the others saw as the human race's killing weapon was ignored by the Lord Dragon God. I thought that it would save me some trouble. I didn't expect that I still have to do it myself. Senior Dragon, why did you create this race? This isn't what the dragon race is good at. Aren't you just looking for trouble? As Jilin spoke, he revealed his true form. The red megalosaurus suddenly appeared on the surface of the sea and instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. The intense heat evaporated the endless sea water. The entire world became hazy, and a huge fog covered Qi Lin's godlike body, appearing and disappearing from time to time. It looked even more unreal. The cheers of the human race stopped abruptly. Without exception, all the members of the sea race worshipped Qi Lin. It was as if the endless evil spirits in hell were worshipping the demon king who destroyed the world. It was just that they had never heard of a demon king who paid attention to such grandeur. The scene was grand and solemn, but also extremely strange. Any human religious activity was far inferior to it. Jilin opened his wings and flapped them twice. His body slowly left the sea surface. As a fire dragon, Xiao Chun did not like water. Although Bose had only heard of Xiao Chun, he immediately recognized the terrifying demon-like creature before him. This was because Xiao Chun was too iconic. Xiao Chun was fundamentally different from all the flying dragons in the Divine Dragon Empire. A true dragon. A red disaster. This was what the humans called Jilin. It was because he was the true disaster of the human race. Be on guard, Bose roared. 1 second ago, he was secretly rejoicing. The next second, he felt like Mount Tai was pressing down on him. This was probably the case with 1 step to heaven and 1 step to hell. Bose was covered in sweat. However, he suddenly felt something warm beside him. Bose turned his head and saw that Flay's feet had already left the ground, floating in the air. Flaming wings grew out her back. Chapter 260. Looking at Flay, Boris was stunned. He didn't know what she wanted to do. Fly high and see far. However, Flay was a straightforward person. Before he could say anything, Flay had already turned into a fiery light and shot toward Jilin. She was like an arrow leaving the bow. Boris looked at Flay's departing figure and was dumbstruck. He thought to himself, legendary experts are really ferocious. What's she trying to do? Is she trying to slay a dragon in the midst of countless enemies by herself? This is much more difficult than taking the head of a general in the midst of an army of 10,000. A perfectly straight, red line streaked across the sky. That was the mark left behind by the high temperature around Flay. Countless members of the Sea Tribe were worshipping the dragon god. However, when they saw a human figure flash past above their heads, they immediately became irritable. The members of the Sea Tribe roared loudly toward the sky and extended their sharp claws toward Flay. It was as if they wanted to pull Flay down from the sky. However, Flay was flying too high and too fast. They were powerless and could only watch as Flay flew straight toward the dragon god. The various weapons of the Sea Tribe could hit Flay. However, without exception, they were all instantly evaporated by Flay's divine protection flame. Flay's flight was truly filled with the aura of, even if there are tens of thousands of enemies, I will still advance. Everyone was stunned. Even Jilin was stunned. Jilin looked at the human flying toward him with flames all over her body. He was at a loss as to what to do. He didn't know what this human wanted to do. Although this human was stronger than other humans, she was still as weak as an ant in front of him. She couldn't do anything. However, since this was the case, why was she so resolute, so fast, and so impatient as to rush toward him? Jilin couldn't help but raise a trace of vigilance. Humans had a saying, moths flying toward a flame, seeking their own destruction. It was as if a moth flying toward a flame was seeking its own death. This was a saying created by humans who looked down on other life forms. Humans had forgotten that in the boundless universe, out of all living things, only humans had the stupid option of suicide. Other life forms wouldn't have the thought of killing themselves. Therefore, a moth flying toward a flame wasn't seeking its own death. Instead, it was truly trying to extinguish the flame. If the flame was small enough, the moth would be able to extinguish it and leave. It was a fearless spirit that allowed him to complete his destiny even if he knew that he was going to die, even if he had to endure the scorching flames. It was enough to make people deeply admire him. However, for Flay to come over so directly, Jilin was unable to see through her. Because in Jilin's eyes, this human's behavior was worse than a moth darting into a flame. A moth could at least flutter twice in a bonfire, but this human couldn't even flutter twice. Was he really courting death? But if he was looking for death, why was he in such a rush? Are you tired of living? The golden light in Jilin's eyes condensed as he fully unleashed his domain. When Flay rushed into Jilin's domain, the flames around her body and the fire wings on her back disappeared. Within Jilin's domain, all fire elements obeyed him. After Flay lost her ability to fly, she lost her balance. The huge inertia pushed Flay's body, and she fell into the sea, creating a large splash. Looking at the size of the splash, its might wasn't any weaker than a human's cannon. Jilin was taken aback. He didn't know what was going on. However, he heard that there was a kind of lunatic among the humans. When they fell into a river, they would say that the river flowed beside their feet. When they fell, they would say that they struck the earth heavily. When Lingjue sneered, he thought that this human was really courting death. No matter what kind of legendary expert you were, once you entered the sea, you wouldn't be taken seriously by the Sea Tribe. With a thought, when Lingjue saw that the seawater suddenly started moving, a pair of hands formed by seawater rose from the sea and tightly held onto a person. It was Flay. If a person wants to court death, he will use any method. When Lingjue was extremely happy as he looked at Flay. A few days ago, he was injured by Flay's sneak attack and almost lost his life. He was extremely angry. He swore that he wouldn't be part of the Sea Tribe if he didn't take revenge. However, in view of the other party's legendary strength, when Lingjue had already prepared himself to take revenge. But who would have thought that the affairs of the world were so unpredictable? How many days had it been? She had already fallen into his hands. Could this be what the humans often said? There is a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. Legendary human, I am the vanguard of the Sea Tribe, when Lingjue of the Sea Tribe. Today, I surrender. Flay shouted loudly. She shouted confidently and confidently. Her voice was loud and clear. At this moment, when Lingjue felt as if he had been struck by lightning, he was completely stunned and his eyes bulged out. He swallowed the words that he wanted to say. What was going on? The Sea Tribe and the humans had been fighting for countless years, but they had never taken anyone captive. Neither side had the idea of capturing a wounded person and leaving one alive. Humans could surrender to other humans. This was called a wise man submits to circumstances. However, humans wouldn't surrender to the Sea Tribe or the Beast Tribe. This was because humans thought that they would eat humans. It was probably the same for the Sea Tribe. Those who weren't of the same race would have different intentions. Which race in the world didn't have such an idea? But today, the first person to surrender voluntarily appeared. Moreover, it was a legendary expert of a human race. This didn't seem right. After when Lingjue recovered from his shock, the first thought that appeared in his mind was that this was a scheme. This was a despicable and shameless scheme of the human race. The despicable and treacherous nature of the human race was well known in the world. The other races had to admit that they were far inferior to the human race. But what kind of scheme was this? When Lingjue couldn't figure out, no matter what kind of scheme it was, it couldn't be used against a legendary expert. This didn't make sense. Jilin tilted his head and slowly lowered his body. His giant dragon had approached Flay's body. The contrast between the size of the dragon head and the small one was very clear. The human Flay wasn't even as big as a scale on Jilin's lower jaw. For some unknown reason, even the Sea Tribe members were worried for Flay. They felt that if the dragon god took a deep breath, this human would be blown to death. Do you want to surrender? Jilin didn't open his mouth, but his voice transmitted clearly. Yes. Flay's voice was as clear as before. It was filled with righteousness. There wasn't a trace of gloominess or embarrassment in it. It was as if she wasn't shouting that she wanted to surrender, but that she didn't fear death for the sake of the human race. What? Jilin tilted his head and looked at Flay. He had already seen many humans. Their reactions to his main body were all different. Some were so frightened that they couldn't move. Some turned around and fled. There were also some heroes who shouted and raised their weapons as they charged at him. However, this was the first time he saw someone surrender so straightforwardly like Flay. Even Aisha didn't surrender so straightforwardly in the past. I want to follow the Red Dragon God and advance further on the path of fire. Jilin's giant eyes narrowed. This was a human with aspirations. Why should I accept it? Dragon God, I have already established the Red Dragon sect, which worships the Dragon God. I already have several 100,000 followers. This is my sincerity. Jilin was stunned. It turned out that the sect was established by this human. However, his father had once said that faith was a mysterious thing even for the Dragon Clan. Although the gods flocked to it, it was better for the dragon race not to get involved with it. This isn't enough, Jilin said. I am willing to lead all the members of the Red Dragon sect to take down the Divine Dragon Empire for Lord Dragon God. I will let the Divine Dragon Empire live up to its name. What use do I have for the human empire? The entire empire will listen to the Dragon God's divine decree. Jilin shook his head. Every year, the empire will offer boundless gold, silver, and treasures to the Dragon God. Very good, human. I accept your surrender. Jilin was overjoyed. Many thanks, Dragon God. Flay was overjoyed as well. Only when Lingjue felt indescribably upset. After Jilin made his decision, he ignored Flay and turned to look at the distant human city walls. The world's first pass, Calm Wind Pass, Dragon Breath. A 7-colored beam of light instantly tore through the sky, passing over the heads of countless ocean race beings and kicking up strong winds and huge waves. The beam of light instantly pierced through the calm wind formation. Boom! The ground shook and the mountains shook. Jilin blasted a large hole in the calm wind pass, which had stood at the edge of the boundless sea for countless years. A long section of the city walls collapsed. Endless amounts of seawater poured in, and following it were the oceanic race that were as numerous as sand. These ocean race beings roared and fought to be the first to charge into the human defensive line that had blocked the ocean race for many years. The humans fought a bloody battle, fighting to the death with the ocean race beings who entered the calm wind pass. Although the humans fought valiantly, the situation was already hopeless. They could not turn the situation around. The humans lost the calm wind pass. Radiant calendar, 8th month, year 205, a red calamity descended on the calm wind pass. The humans broke the calm wind formation and the calm wind pass. The human legend Flay betrayed the humans. The humans were caught off guard. The human defensive line fell, and the ocean race swarmed in. In the same year, the Red Dragon sect established the Red Dragon Army to take over the Divine Dragon Empire. The Radiant Calendar. Chapter 261. The light of the dragon's breath streaked across, bringing with it the aura of death and destruction. It was as if the calm wind formation did not exist. It had not stopped the beam of light in the slightest. Then, the earth shook and a section of the calm wind pass collapsed. Seawater surged in, and so did the sea folk. The human soldiers fought with their backs to the wall, disregarding their own safety. Looking at the scenes that happened one after another, Bose was unexpectedly calm. After witnessing the descent of the Red Calamity and the surrender of a human legend, what was there that he could not accept? Could this be a deathly calm? Boris thought to himself. Bose scanned the battlefield and felt that there was nothing much to say. Everything was in a mess. At this time, he was of no use as the commander. Boris turned around and walked back to the general's hall. He walked very steadily. There was a battlefield around him, and everywhere was filled with the most intense killing. Yet, he walked as if there was no one around him. He passed through the hellish battlefield and returned to the general's hall. Boris walked behind the desk and sat down calmly. He began to write a letter. However, this letter was not easy to write. This was a report to the hero king, and, at the same time, it was his farewell letter. Hence, Boris held the brush and pondered for a moment before beginning. I, Boris, the general of Calm Wind Pass, write a letter to your majesty, the hero king. Today, the Red Calamity suddenly appeared in Calm Wind Pass. Fu Lei betrayed the human race and joined the Red faction. Calm Wind Pass was lost. A city that had not been broken for 1,000 years was destroyed in a day. Countless people of the empire were in danger. This was not a crime of war, but a crime of this subject. This subject was originally a lowly person. Fortunately, your majesty thought highly of me and entrusted me with the important task of guarding Calm Wind Pass. However, today, this subject failed your majesty and offended the world. I do not have the face to continue living in this world. The only way is to die. Sacrificing myself for the city is the duty of this subject. Your majesty, please do not worry. However, the death of this subject is a small matter. The safety of the empire's millions of people is more important. I hope your majesty will make a plan. Peace Wind Pass's farewell letter. After Boris finished writing the letter, he carefully placed it in an envelope. He then took out a small box from a drawer. Boris looked at the box and could not help but smile. The box was completely black, and there was a gem embedded in it. It was emitting a white light. There was also a box like this on His Majesty's desk. For the sake of this box, His Majesty had personally sent someone to instruct him not to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. Boris gently placed the envelope in the box. The gemstone on the box flashed twice. Then, the light dissipated and the gem shattered into two halves, mother of asterisk cur. Such an expensive item is only a one-time use item. Boris understood. The witches deserved to have their lineage cut off. Bose opened the box again to take a look. It was empty. The envelope must have appeared on His Majesty's desk by now. Now that the matter was settled, Bose heaved a sigh of relief. He pulled out his sword and gently stroked it. His only remaining eye looked indifferently at the entrance of the general's hall. He would kill whoever came in. If there are two of you, I'll kill both of you. No matter what, I am still at the peak of the 9th stage. In the temple of the Elven Island, there were only 5 divine pearls on the altar. The green one suddenly broke into pieces without a single sound. Then, a light breeze blew past. The Elven Queen had already appeared beside the altar. Staya and Bane were with him. Bane turned his head in confusion. Obviously, he didn't know what had happened. "This is," Staya said. The Elven Queen looked at the green divine pearl and was silent for a long time. Then, she slowly said, "The calm wind pass has been breached." "What?" Bane was extremely shocked. The Elven Queen looked at Bane. She didn't know why he was so shocked. He was the one who lured the red dragon over. "Your Majesty, we can't wait any longer," Staya said. "I think so too," the Elven Queen said. "Go and take a look. Then follow your heart." "Yes." Staya nodded. The Elven Queen nodded slightly. Then she waved her hand. Staya and Bane disappeared from the temple. The Elven Queen waved her hand and sent the two away. Then she turned her head and looked at the green divine pearl. She said softly, "It's too fast." "Who is it? The god of darkness?" After so many years, he's still not satisfied. On the city wall of the Calm Wind Pass, Jilin, who had already turned into a human, was sitting on the city wall. He was holding a glowing blue scale and carefully examining it. That was a dragon scale. It was the dragon scale that the Oceanic tribe gave him. Calm Wind Pass had undergone earth-shaking changes in just half a day's time. The nearby land had already turned into a vast ocean. Only the city wall of the Calm Wind Pass was still stubbornly above the water surface. It was announcing to the entire world that there was once a city here. A gust of spring wind suddenly blew past Jilin's face. Yes, spring wind. Although it was summer, that gust of wind was so delicate and gentle. It moistened everything silently. The temperature and humidity were just right. It should be spring wind. This spring wind didn't even move a single strand of Jilin's hair. However, it made Jilin squint his eyes. A gust of spring wind in summer was indeed comfortable, but it was a little too strange. Jilin raised his head. The light in his eyes suddenly shone brightly. Two people seemed to have arrived with the spring wind. They silently appeared in front of Jilin. The last person who appeared in front of Jilin like this was Aisha. Then, she was killed by Jilin once. This time, Jilin didn't attack. These two people were Staya and Bane. The princess was finally alive. He didn't want her to die again. Where is this? Why is there a city wall in the ocean? Bane spun around twice. Jilin, why are you here? The Elf Queen can actually send us directly to you? That's too amazing. Jilin. Staya looked at Jilin. Her tone was very complicated. Long time no see. Yes, long time no see. Jilin was very happy. Looks like I really couldn't stop you. Of course. Can't you just stay there? Why should I? Doesn't it matter where you stay? That's true. But I can't leave. Why? Seeing the dwarves, orcs, oceanic species, magical beasts, elemental creatures, and so many other species being bullied and humiliated by humans, how can I just leave? I have to worry about the world first and enjoy the world later. I have to take responsibility for the people in the world. I have to give them a fair and bright world. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. The god of light is blessed by the people, and so are the orcs. Staya was completely stunned this time. How is this something a dragon would say? But when Jilin said it, Staya was only stunned for a moment. She wasn't too shocked, because she was the one who taught Jilin all this. Before Staya could say anything, Bane's loud voice sounded. "Haha, that's enough. Oh my god, you're killing me." "You." Bane laughed and shouted at the same time. He was out of breath. Jilin was teasing him so much. Jilin glanced at him calmly. Bane quickly stopped talking. "I didn't expect the Elven Queen to really cure Staya." "It's all thanks to you," Jilin said seriously. Well said, well said. Bane was also very proud. "Speaking of which, where is this? Why is there a city wall in the sea? What are you doing here?" "Huh?" Jilin was stunned. He looked at Bane. "This is Calm Wind Pass. I'm looking at a scale." Bane was also stunned. "Calm Wind Pass. Where is it? What's so good about a scale?" Jilin lowered his head and glanced at Bane's feet. Then, he raised a blue scale. Bane glanced at the blue scale. The scale was sparkling and blue. It was indeed very beautiful. Then he followed Jilin's gaze and looked at his feet. Chapter 262. Bane frowned and slowly looked at his feet. Simple and unadorned green stone bricks came into view. The bricks were very big, 1 meter wide and 2 to 3 meters long. They were used by the humans to build city walls. Bane had seen them in many places when he was in the Red Dragon sect. However, Bane had never seen such a sense of antiquity and richness before. A bad feeling crept into Bane's heart. Bane raised his head and looked around. He was surrounded by the boundless sea. This is Calm Wind Pass. Bane looked at Jilin. Jilin did not say anything. He had already asked this question. What's wrong? Bane asked. Was it always like this? Jilin looked at Bane as if he was looking at an idiot and shook his head. Bane suddenly felt the world spin. He could not stand properly and staggered 2 steps, almost falling down. Staya was shocked and reached out to support him. After all, he was a thief who could practice his sword on smooth stones covered in moss. He could leap over roofs and vault over walls as if he was walking on flat ground. Why couldn't he stand still? What's wrong? Staya asked. Bane waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. When he raised his head again, his face was already pale, without a trace of blood. Calm Wind Pass, this. Is it broken? Bane frowned, his voice trembling. Jilin nodded. His gaze was still on the blue scale, looking very serious. It was only when Staya arrived that he moved his gaze away for a while. Why is the sea so high? Bane asked again. If this was Calm Wind Pass, then it was too close to the sea. Bane felt that if he sat on top of the city wall and stretched out his legs slightly, he could easily reach the sea. If the sea in front of Calm Wind Pass was always this high, then the Oceanids would be able to jump to the top of the city wall. Then what was the point of defending Calm Wind Pass? Jilin shook his head, indicating that he did not know. What about the people here? Bane closed his eyes and tried to digest the bad news. Most of them died, but some ran away, Jilin said. What about the sea tribe that attacked the city? Bane asked again. We breached the city and left. Gone? Where did you go? Jilin pointed to the west. Bane's vision darkened again. Isn't that the direction of the Divine Dragon Empire's hinterland? What are you doing here? Bane gritted his teeth and said hatefully. Jilin stared blankly for a moment. If that was the case, what was he here for? Bane looked at his expression and knew that he had forgotten. He became even angrier. Didn't we agree before? I will go to the Elven Island and ask the Elven Queen to help heal Staya. And you, are you going to help me look after Rue Yun City and Foam Ping Pass? All right, Jilin remembered. Right your head, Bane roared. His face was red, and his veins were bulging. Aren't you going to help me look after Foam Ping Pass? With you around, how could the Sea Tribe breach Foam Ping Pass? How did you breach it? Because I was the one who breached it. Jilin looked at Bane. He thought, is there a need to say this? If I didn't make a move, who knows how long it would take for those disappointing Sea Tribe members to breach Foam Ping Pass. Bane was stunned. Then, as if he had been struck by lightning, he stood there in a daze. He looked at Jilin in a daze. However, there was no focus in his eyes. It was as if he had lost his soul. Jilin was the one who breached Foam Ping Pass. Then, what exactly did I do? I was the one who did everything possible to get Jilin to come to Foam Ping Pass. Back then, when Lei Se had laid his cards on the table, what had he said shamelessly? That's right, I said, my Red Dragon sect has a Red Dragon god who can suppress Foam Ping Pass alone. How is this Foam Ping Pass? This mother of Asterisk King Foam Ping Pass was defeated by him alone. Bane cursed in his heart. His eyes instantly turned red. A huge sense of guilt surged in his heart. If I didn't mention this, Jilin wouldn't have come. If Jilin didn't come, how could Foam Ping Pass be breached? You promised me that you would look after Foam Ping Pass. Is this how you saw it? Bane pointed at Jilin and questioned. Yes, I saw it. Jilin was very serious. The moment I arrived, I saw that group of humans riding on those flying insects and flying all over the place. Bane naturally knew that the flying insects Jilin was referring to the flying dragons. Bane broke out in cold sweat. His voice trembling, he said, then, You breached phone ping pass in a fit of anger? Jilin was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. Then, what about Rueyan City? Bane suddenly thought of something. Not too bad. What do you mean not too bad? Bane didn't dare to be careless this time. Nothing happened, Jilin said. Are you sure? Bane stared at Jilin. Jilin said. Bane let out a long sigh of relief. He knew that Jilin wouldn't lie to him. Then, without any warning, a black light appeared in Bane's hand. Bane roared. Like a tiger descending from the mountain, he rushed over while hiding Jilin. His black dagger drew a cold arc as it pierced towards Jilin's golden eyes. Bane was like a true assassin. Before he made his move, he hid his killing intent very well. Not a hint of it leaked out. Once he made his move, he became incomparably crazy. Silent as a virgin, moving like a fleeing rabbit. He caught people off guard, just like when he stabbed the Golden King in the palace of the Middle Empire. Incomparably stunning. Bane's movements were like moving clouds and flowing water. From pulling out the dagger to rushing towards Jilin, the exchange of stillness and movement only took a moment. But in Jilin's eyes, his movements seemed to have slowed down countless times. Even if he was a true tiger descending from the mountain in front of a true dragon, what was the difference between him and a petite kitten? Jilin sighed in his heart and thought to himself again, how many times had it been since the three of them attacked him? Jilin saw the cold arc clearly. He gently reached out and pinched the tip of the dagger. Bane froze, then began to struggle frantically. He wanted to pull the dagger out of Jilin's fingertips, but the dagger seemed to grow in Jilin's hand. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move it at all. Although Bane's mood was very sad and indignant, he couldn't help but think of a story Jilin told him. In a distant world, there was a country called Great Britain. There was a sword inserted in a stone, and whoever could pull it out would be the king of Great Britain. Countless brave men came one after another, but in front of this sword, they were all defeated. Now, he was the same as those who had the sword. Jilin told him this story to tell him that human beings were not born equal. No matter how hard you worked, it was useless. Some things that you couldn't do even if you died might be easily done by someone. The world was unfair. The failure of countless warriors was to serve as a foil for King Arthur. Bane pulled for a long time and exhausted all his strength. Finally, he was exhausted and calmed down a lot. He let out a long sigh and let go of the dagger. He gave up. Bane thought that if he could pull the dagger out of Jilin's hand, he would be much more powerful than King Arthur. He was still to blame for this. He knew that Jilin would be furious when he saw the Dragon Knights. How could he let him come? Because there was no other way. Bane accidentally killed 2 Dragon Knights. He didn't know that the Middle Empire had sent aid to Ping Phone Pass. He felt that Ping Phone Pass couldn't be defended, and Jilin was his only hope. He had to take a gamble. He was betting that Jilin would bear with it for his sake or for the sake of countless other living beings. He would pretend that he didn't see anything. He was too naive. Chapter 263. Bane was secretly annoyed and extremely regretful. He looked at Jilin, knowing that he could neither beat him nor persuade him. Then he looked at the vast ocean around him. It should have been land, but it had changed so much in just a few days. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. He even had the idea of killing himself to apologize to the world. However, Bane only thought about it. After all, he was a citizen of the Saimai Empire. The children of the Saimai Empire read the sacred book of light. Therefore, from this point of view, all citizens of the Saimai Empire were at least half believers of the Church of Light. However, the Church of Light did not allow its believers to commit suicide. According to the sacred book of light, the souls of those who committed suicide would not be able to go to heaven and see the God of light. They could only fall to hell and accompany the evil Lord of Hell. Their souls would eventually be polluted. This was a common saying that almost all religions had. All religions believe that there are 2 other worlds apart from the world in which man lives. One is perfect and is above the world in which he lives. The other was incomparably terrible. Those who went there would always suffer below this world. Believers only needed to do things according to the teachings of their religion. After death, they would be able to go to that beautiful world where the God they believed in lived. In that world, they would be able to obtain everything. They would be rid of all suffering, and their bodies and hearts would be satisfied. However, people were divided into good and bad. Everything in the world was divided into yin and yang. Religions were also divided into orthodox religions and evil cults. The most important condition to distinguish between orthodox religions and evil cults was to see if the teachings did not allow believers to commit suicide. A religion like the Church of Light would tell you that if you wanted to see the God of Light, you had to do good deeds in the world. You had to be devout and cultivate your heart. All your sins had to be redeemed. Only then could you go to heaven. There was no shortcut. If it was an evil cult, it would be much simpler. The higher-ups would casually assign you a task. Blow something up, assassinate someone, or burn yourself. They would then tell you that these were the instructions of God. After death, you would be able to see God. Bane had followed Jilin for such a long time, and now he was a little skeptical about these things, such as whether people could go to heaven after death. According to Jilin, heaven seemed to be a world exclusive to the gods, and humans would not be allowed to set foot in it. However, he still felt that the Church of Light was right. In comparison, those idiots from the Red Dragon sect were crazy. They actually believed that after they were burned to death, Jilin would take them to heaven. It was pure nonsense. Although Jilin had wings and could fly quite high, he definitely couldn't fly to heaven. Thinking of this, Bane looked up at Jilin. Bane was suddenly stunned because he saw that Jilin had stood up and was nervously looking behind him. Bane was shocked. Cold sweat dripped down from his forehead in an instant. This was the first time he had seen such a nervous expression on Jilin's face. What could make Jilin so nervous? Even when he was facing the elven Queen Zero, although he was on full alert, as if he was facing a great enemy, he did not show such an expression. Should he turn around and take a look? Bane was a little hesitant. However, Bane finally made up his mind and chose to turn around. Damn it. Even if I'm going to die, I have to know the reason. He wanted to see what it was that could scare Jilin to such an extent. Could it be that the God of Light had personally descended to this world? Did he want to punish Jilin? Bane swallowed hard. He only felt that his legs were trembling, but he still slowly turned around. He was stunned again. He suddenly understood why Jilin was so nervous. It was because Staya had put on the knight's armor again. She held a battle hammer in her hand, and her body was shining brightly. It seemed that she wanted to hit Jilin. Bane put his hands in front of his eyes to block Staya's holy light. He was nervous too. He thought to himself, "Sister, it was not easy for us to save you. Are you going to risk your life with Jilin again? Don't. We can't beat him even if we attack together. It's useless." Just as Bane was about to persuade Staya to put down her weapon, he heard Jilin's voice behind him. "What are you doing?" Jilin's voice sounded a little dry. It was obvious that he was panicking. "I want to do justice for the heavens." Staya pointed the hammer of victory at Jilin with a determined look. "Again? You want to risk your life with me again?" Jilin's face was bitter. He thought to himself, it's really embarrassing for a dragon to live like this. What did the seniors of the dragon race do? Why wasn't there any in the bloodline inheritance? Did the princesses they captured never try to kill themselves? Didn't they want to die together with them? Didn't they want to kill themselves to stop this endless tragedy when they saw the warriors who came to save her fall one after another in front of the Megalosaurus? The princesses they captured were not aware enough. The princess with slender arms picked up the sword in the dragon's cave. She looked at the warrior who was about to die in battle and smiled sadly. The sharp and cold blade rested on her snow-white neck. The princess's eyes were resolute and full of light. She told the brave man, "Hurry up and leave. Go back and tell my father not to send anyone to save me. Don't make any more unnecessary sacrifices. Also, I love him." After the princess finished speaking, she dragged her arm. That was what a princess should do. Other people aside, Jilin felt that Staya would definitely do it. If she could drag him down with her, she probably wouldn't hesitate at all. That's right. As expected, Staya didn't hesitate at all. She took 2 steps forward. "Wait." Jilin raised his hand and took 2 steps back. It was the first time he backed down in front of a human. "Why do you always want to risk your life? Can't you be more reasonable?" Staya froze and couldn't help but stop. It was the first time someone said she was unreasonable. Bane's expression became very interesting. A dragon wanted to reason with a human. How helpless must he be to do such a thing? Bane looked at Jilin and shook his head. He felt that Jilin wouldn't be able to win against Staya when it came to reasoning. After all, Staya was the one who taught him all the principles of the human race. Even if the dragon race was very talented, it wouldn't be that easy for them to surpass their teacher in this matter. Staya thought seriously and finally nodded. Okay, I'll be reasonable. Go ahead. Take a look at this. Crimson Lyn took out a piece of glittering paper from nowhere and handed it to Staya. What's this? Staya took it and looked down. Then she looked up. I don't understand. This is the contract signed between the human race and the ocean race in the mythological era. It's written in the dragon race's language, Jilin said. What does it say? Staya looked at Jilin. What kind of contract did the human race and the ocean race sign? It was the first time she heard about it. It says that from where we are now, 100,000 miles to the west will be the land shared by the ocean race and the human race. From April to October every year, it's the high tide period of the endless ocean. The ocean will drown the mountains. During this period, the land belongs to the ocean race. From November to March, the ocean will recede and the land will appear again. At this time, the land belongs to the human race. But later, the human race built the Calm Wind Pass and occupied the land shared by the two races for countless years, until today. Chapter 264. Staya frowned as she listened. Seeing that Jilin had stopped talking, she collected her thoughts and started to think about what Jilin had just said. This was the first time that Jilin had taken the initiative to reason with her, so she was caught off guard. No matter how long the article was, or how beautiful the words were, the main point would always be a short sentence. Ignoring those meaningless, beautiful words was an instinct that Staya had cultivated as a member of the royal family since she was young, which means that the land 100,000 miles to the west of Pingfong Pass is shared by both races. But it has always been monopolized by humans? Staya concluded. So you helped the people of the sea when you saw the injustice and gave justice to the sea race. That's right, Jilin said. So you're doing justice for the people? Bane froze. So you're doing a good deed by taking over Pingfong Pass? That's not what I meant, but you can say that. Jilin was very casual. What do you mean? Bane was furious. Do you think I'm complimenting you? Staya stopped Bane and looked at Jilin. This is only one side of the story from the sea race. Staya pointed at the golden paper. No. Jilin shook his head. This is a contract that both humans and the sea race agreed to. How do you prove it? Staya and Bane asked at the same time. Jilin took the paper and pointed at a line of small words. This means that there are two copies of this contract. The humans and the sea race each have one copy. The sea race has one that's written in dragon language, and the humans have one that's written in human language. Staya and Bane looked at each other. They both knew that Jilin wouldn't lie, but this was too unbelievable. What other evidence do you have? Staya asked. And this. Jilin moved his finger to the bottom right corner of the paper. Staya frowned. If what Jilin said was true and this was a contract, then the place that Jilin was pointing at should be the place where the signatories signed the contract. Staya and Bane looked forward at the same time and were stunned. They didn't recognize any of the words on the paper, except for the words Jilin was pointing at. To be precise, it was a name. George Pendragon. It was a human name written in human language. Who is George? Bane turned to look at Staya. George Pendragon, the first emperor of the Divine Dragon Empire. Staya knew this. Bane still didn't quite believe it. It can't be fake, right? Could it be that the sea race forged the emperor's signature so that they could have a reason to invade human lands? I won't. Staya was deep in thought. She shook her head slowly. There's no need for that. The sea race isn't human. It's natural for them to invade human lands. There's no need for a reason. What if? Bane was a little anxious. What if the sea race pays attention to this? They won't. This contract has a magical effect. The name written on it must be the author's real name, Staya said. That means this signature was indeed written by the first hero king. This contract should be recognized and obeyed by the divine dragon empire. That means that humans really invaded the sea race's lands? And the sea race is really just taking back what belongs to them. Bane's voice trembled. He couldn't accept it. That's not right. Stya's eyes flashed. If the first hero king signed such an important contract, it's impossible for there to be no traces of it in human history. Then do you remember the blood sacrifice? Jilin suddenly asked. Stya narrowed her eyes and stared at Jilin. There seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. Those were flames of anger. Of course, she remembered the blood sacrifice. It was the formation that the Church of Light's interim Pope, Lord, had set up for Jilin during the Battle of Snowfire. 90 Church of Light bishops were sacrificed. The huge blood-red formation turned the sky red. However, it was useless against Jilin. Not only did the 90 bishops die for nothing, but they were also mocked by Jilin. Jilin looked at Stya's gloomy face and couldn't help but take a step back. Looking at her expression, he knew she hadn't forgotten. However, before they attacked me, as the Holy Lady of Light, did you know about this formation? Stya was stunned. She understood a little. Jilin mentioned this to her not to mock the seniors of the Church of Light, but because he really wanted to say something to her. I didn't know. Stya shook her head with a heavy expression. She already vaguely knew what Jilin wanted to say. Why didn't you know? Jilin said, because they hid this evil formation that required the sacrifice of 90 lives. This makes sense. Humans don't like to face their sins, their mistakes, and their darkness. They will do everything they can to cover it up. This contract is the same. The history of humans is recorded and written by humans, and humans listen to the king. You should know about this. However, when the Hero King signed this contract, how did he know that he would break the contract and not let the historians record it? Stya's voice became softer and softer. Finally, she fell silent. She already understood. That is to say, when the first Hero King signed this contract, he had already made up his mind to build Calm Wind Pass and occupy these 50,000 kilometers of land. Bane also understood. I didn't think too much about that. Jilin looked at Bane. However, I think you were right. Look, this person is so shameless. Bane blurted out. After he finished speaking, he realized what he had said and his face turned pale. From the looks of it, the darkness of human history was still hard for him to accept. On the other hand, Stya, who seemed to be obsessed with moral cleanliness, lowered her head in deep thought. She didn't feel much of an impact. Stya was royalty after all, and she was familiar with history. It was not uncommon for countries to break treaties and attack each other in Stya's eyes. How many treaties had the 5 great human empires made? How many had they broken? There were simply too many to count. The human emperors had a code of conduct like words of gold and jade, words of 9 tripods. However, compared to the expansion of the empire and the prosperity of the country, it was not worth mentioning. If the first Hero King really made a contract with the sea race, and when the empire became powerful, he broke the contract and occupied the land shared by the sea race and humans, then it wouldn't be strange at all. In that case, there was nothing strange about it at all. It was very normal and even logical. All the human empires did this. The only abnormal thing was that Jilin, who was as powerful as a god and a simple-minded dragon, took this contract seriously. No, or rather, he only used this as an excuse. In fact, he was unhappy with the Divine Dragon Empire, so he took action personally. Stya was very clear about Jilin's hatred for the Dragon Knights and the Divine Dragon Empire. Where did you get this? Bane asked. Stya was also very curious when she heard that. She looked at Jilin. A member of the sea race called when Lingjue gave it to me, Jilin said. Why did he give it to you? Stya asked. How would I know? Jilin said. You want it. Bane really didn't know what to say. Who would have thought that Bane and Stya would fail in this easy task? What kind of people were they? One of them was a spy in an evil cult. The other was the Holy Maiden of Light, the Empire's princess. She was also very good at reasoning. However, the two of them were now rendered speechless by Jilin. It seemed like reasoning was not a competition of who was better with words. But do you know? Once Calm Wind Pass falls, the sea will flood 50,000 kilometers of land. How many people will die Because of this, this is a world-ending disaster. Suffering is not enough to describe it. Stias said, only humans would call the extinction of the human race the end of the world. They would call the death of the human race a calamity. You are living beings, but so are the sea race. Jilin put away the contract and took out the blue scale. Stia remained silent for a while before finally looking at Jilin. Even if the human race is in the wrong, the countless people about to drown are innocent. Chapter 265. Yes, you're right. Jilin agreed with Stia. Why do you keep holding on to that scale? Where did you get this thing from? Why didn't you play with it like this before? Vane didn't expect the humans to be in the wrong. He felt awkward and wanted to change the topic. This is the scale of the dragon race. It was given to me by the oceanic race. There was nothing special about it at first, but after I broke through the calm wind pass, it kept flashing. I could feel that it was calling me, and it was guiding me to a certain place. Jilin stroked the blue scale. Where? Over there. Jilin looked to the west. I'm talking about the countless lives of humans. Stia dragged the topic back. Don't worry. Jilin waved his hand. Don't worry. Stia opened her eyes wide. Yes, because Flay is following the Oceanids, Jilin said. She won't let the Oceanids kill the innocent. Flay. Stia and Bane shouted in unison. Isn't the leader here to guard the calm wind pass? Why is she with the Oceanids? Bane had joined the Red Dragon sect for more than a year. He didn't change his words in a moment of panic. After he realized what he was saying, he sneaked a glance at Stia. Seeing that she was looking at him, he quickly looked away and shrunk his head. He couldn't let Stia know that he had joined the Red Dragon sect, even if he had never joined the Church of Light. He had never heard of a person from the Simi Empire joining another religion. Oh, because she surrendered to me. She's now one of my people. Jilin's words sounded like a little gangster who had just made a name for himself in the underworld. One of my people. Although his words weren't appropriate, the amount of information in his words was shocking. No, it was enough to shock all humans. Stia and Bane felt like they were struck by lightning. Anyone who heard the news of a human legend surrendering to the Megalosaurus would be shocked. Bane was sweating profusely. Originally, when he learned that Jilin had breached Ping Foam Mountain Pass, he was not too worried about this cheap cult master. He had been in the Red Dragon sect for many days. Even if he hadn't met the sect leader, he still knew what kind of person he was. She would not do something as heroic as defending Ping Foam Pass to the death, nor would she do something as suicidal as fighting Jilin to the death. Since that was the case, as a legendary powerhouse, he should have no problem keeping himself alive. But unexpectedly, Bane still underestimated this person's bottom line. As a human legend, what kind of status did he have? Did he not care about his reputation at all? Surrender? Earlier on, the Elven Queen had called him a traitor of the human race, and he had silently agreed to it in his heart. But now, compared to the sect leader, he could only sigh in admiration. As a member of the Red Dragon sect, Bane did not have any temper at all. He only felt that he had lost face. He lowered his head and looked carefully. The ground of Ping Foam Mountain Pass was really smooth. There were no cracks at all. Otherwise, Bane would have really wanted to dig in. You let Flay follow the Sea Tribe army? Let her watch the Sea Tribe and not kill the innocent? Stia concluded. Yes. Jilin was obviously distracted. Do you have the heart to do that? Bane said. Jilin couldn't help but spit this out. Since when did Jilin care about human lives? My mother once told me to cherish life. I should not look down on other races because they are too weak. If that happened, the dragon race would become extremely lonely. It was rare for Jilin to talk about his parents. Furthermore, even if humans are incomparably small, there are still millions of lives after all. Stia and Bane looked at each other. They had an indescribable feeling in their hearts. Well, anyone who heard a murderous devil whose hands were stained with blood seriously say, "My mother told me to cherish my life," with a nostalgic expression and a reminiscing gaze would definitely have the same feeling. Moreover, the number of people Jilin had killed was more than the number of people killed by any murderous demon in human history. Actually, Jilin had mentioned this to the three of them a long time ago. Although it was very casual back then, The three of them still remembered it in their hearts. However, Jilin's performance later on made the three of them have a new understanding of Jilin. This was a rebellious young man from the dragon race. Not only did he not listen to his mother, he even did the opposite. Young man, you should listen to your mother when you are outside. She was right. She has already surrendered to you and betrayed the human race. Why would she do this willingly? Staya decided to put this matter aside for now. This is her own request. Jilin said. She said that every human she saved would become a member of the Red Dragon sect, and one of us. This would make it easier for her to rule in the future. Rule? Staya immediately grasped the main point. Rule what? Rule who? The Divine Dragon Empire. Jilin's lips curled up slightly. He thought to himself, this is a really good idea. Just based on the name of this country, I should rule it. This way, it will be worthy of its name. Staya stared straight at Jilin. The sea breeze that blew past from time to time blew Jilin's red hair. It really looked like a ball of fire jumping around. Staya thought to herself, did this megalosaurus become a true disaster for the human race in the end? Bane facepalmed. So that's how it is. Our sect leader is indeed very wise and has profound means. Usurping the Divine Dragon Empire's authority had always been the Red Dragon sect's goal. However, they never had a good opportunity, so they did not make a move. This time, the Red Dragon sect even managed to pull in a strong person like Jilin, who broke the rules. Furthermore, with calm wind pass broken and the sea race invading, the Divine Dragon Empire's Dragon Knights would all be gone. The army would suffer heavy losses, and their morale would take a hit. The Divine Dragon Empire faced both internal and external problems. The lives of the people were threatened. At this moment, Flay led the Red Dragon sect to appear before the people like a savior. With this, the Red Dragon sect had the right time, place, and people. The Red Dragon sect did not need to put in much effort. The Red Dragon sect already did all the work that needed to be done. They only needed to go with the flow at an appropriate time, and the Divine Dragon Empire's water-patterned blue dragon banner could be exchanged for a fiery-patterned red dragon banner. The sect leader's surrender was extremely beautiful. When one thought about it carefully, one could not help cheering for it. However, it was somewhat too despicable, too embarrassing. Even Bane, who was known for being unscrupulous in the Red Dragon sect to obtain the title of Hidden Shadow, felt some disdain. All right, it's time to go. Jilin suddenly stood up. Where are you going? Staya and Bane asked at the same time, appearing very nervous. They finally understood. Wherever this fellow went, the place would be turned upside down. Could it be that the megalosaurus really brought disaster? I plan to follow the call of this scale and see where it wants to bring me. Do you want to come with me? Staya and Bane exchanged glances. Then, they looked at the boundless sea around them, feeling speechless. They could only go with Jilin. Otherwise, they would be trapped here. Although Staya might be able to swim back to land with her abilities, many people had died in this sea. Everywhere was red, and the smell of blood attracted many life forms. Countless sharks swam around on the surface of the sea. There were also countless small fish in the surroundings, eating the corpses of humans and members of the oceanic race. In these small fish's eyes, there was no difference between the oceanic race and humans. The sharks and the small fish lived harmoniously in the same sea area because everyone had enough food to eat. However, even so, it didn't mean that swimming in the sea was a wise choice. There were still a few sharks swimming around them. It seemed like the corpses were full and wanted to eat something new. These life forms could eat peacefully here purely because Jilin purposely concealed his aura. He concealed it to the extent that even the natural wind could blow his hair. Otherwise, as long as Jilin's aura leaked out, no fish would dare to approach this newly formed sea area. Jilin looked at the sharks swimming around his feet. He noticed that they were drooling, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Yes, which life form didn't want a sense of novelty, even if it was at the cost of other life forms' lives? However, this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Wasn't it? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.